Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you September! Are you ready? For September? Because it's coming. Here he comes. Draw your bow. Smoked him, man. Welcome to the next installment of the School of September series, brought to you by the Western Huntsman Podcast, in conjunction and partnership with Phelps Game Calls and Scream Extreme Mountain Gear. Elk Hunting 201. Class is in session. All right, here we go, guys. It's September 1st, 2020. This crazy year of 2020, we finally made it to September elk season. I know for many of you, I've been watching from way up here in the north country of Idaho, these hunts opening up all over down south. You know, you guys are already, I don't know why they wait till September 6th for our season up here for elk to open up, but they do. And so we're still a few days out up here. I'm gearing up. I'm ready to go. Watching some of you guys are already out there in the field. Some of you guys already have notches in your tags. And guys, here it is. It's September. I'm super excited, super pumped. Thank you for joining us here at the Western Huntsman Podcast for the School of September. I got a great episode today with Jason Phelps of Phelps Game Calls. I'm sure you know who Jason is, and so we're going to get to that here in just a minute. Just a last minute, like kind of last call warning, if you're listening to this today, September 1, for the youth hunters out there, this is your last opportunity to get me those essays for the competition. It ends at midnight tonight. If you're listening to this after September 1, we have already surpassed the deadline, and we will be printing all those essays off and going through them and figuring out who our winners are, and hopefully we'll have an announcement of the winner by next week. So that's where we're at with that. Youth hunters, 10 to 17, tell me why you want to hunt or what kind of hunter you want to be, and what kind of example you want to set for the youth hunters that are coming up behind you. Don't care about the length, don't care about anything else, just write me that essay, and good luck to you guys. I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far. So we've gotten several entries so far, and a lot of them are really good. We've got some really good prizes, and you're going to find out about those next week. So guys, all right, I hope you're ready. This is the final installment of the School of September. And we have gone through with all of some of the best elk hunters in the world have been on this show for the School of September. Take a look at it. We've had the Elk Nut. We've had Dirk Durham, the bugler. We've had Michael Batiste with the Elk Calling Academy. We've had Corey Jacobson with Elk 101. We've had Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources. We've had Joe Gillia of Elk Bros. And this is the final episode with Phelps Game Calls, Jason Phelps, a guy who's just an absolute killer of elk and a serial killer at that. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation. We had some sad news kind of come out of Oregon that I wanted to address real quick as we roll into this, because I have a couple of things for you before we get into the interview with Jason. So an Oregon hunter, he goes in, and this last Saturday, he wounds a bull elk. There's not a lot of information out there just yet on this. It's still pretty fresh. I mean, we're talking a couple of days ago here, and so the articles are pretty vague, and the news stories are pretty vague about it. But this guy, He's 66 years old. He goes out there and wounds a bull with his bow. Goes in, it gets dark. They can't locate it, so they go in the next morning. And he's on some private property. The landowner goes in with him to try to help locate this wounded bull, finds the bull, and tries to dispatch the bull one more time. And that bull charged him, came at him, and kind of gorged him in the neck with his antlers. And unfortunately, the guy did not make it. He did not survive the attack. They did locate the bull and dispatched it. There's not a lot of information. So it's kind of a reminder. I think, it's not like this hasn't happened in the past. There's been other circumstances where, mainly with like deer, white-tailed deer have gorged somebody, or trampled somebody. The one thing that I'll say about this is, it's big news. Obviously, it's a shock to the hunting community. It's big news because this is not normal. It's not, this was so circumstantial and so profound in how that happened. And man, my heart just goes out to this guy's family. And I don't want to say his name on the podcast, but it's out there in all the articles that they've released his name and all that. So guys, the one thing that I would hope that everybody learns from this and kind of use it as a tool or a takeaway, to make sure this never happens again to anybody out there. I'm just like, it breaks my heart to hear this story. And this is one of our peeps. He was out there doing what he loves, and he was killed. These are wild animals we're dealing with, whether it's a deer or a damn squirrel. These are wild animals. When you do get, let me rephrase that. When you get an elk down, or a deer, or a bear, or any other game animal, and I've seen this on videos, like people will post their videos on YouTube. They locate the bull, right, and it's laying there, and the assumption is it's dead, it's gone, and they go running up to it and grab the antlers, or they go running up to the elk and they put their hand on it. Guys, that's super dangerous. You really do need to make sure that elk is dead. And he really has been, he's passed away or whatever. There's a couple ways to do that. I always approach the animal from the back, and if you listen to, I can't remember what episode it was. It was with Greg Landis up in Alaska, and we're talking about bear hunting, and he kind of uses the same approach to bears, or with bears. You kind of approach from the rear because they have to fully turn around and you have time to react. Don't come at it from the front. Try to, get close and make a little noise and make sure it's not moving. Look for the tongue hanging out. If the tongue is hanging out, most likely it is dead. That is not 100% guarantee, but most likely it is dead. Couple stories. I know a guy who, when I was a kid, one of the neighbors went deer hunting, and it was a mule deer, and he got this mule deer down. It was only like a 3 or 4 point mule deer, not a very old mule deer, and it was laying there, and he approached the deer, went walking up to it, and kind of set his rifle down, and all of a sudden the deer jumps up and rushes at him and basically launches him into the air. The antlers did not penetrate his body, but they definitely bruised they really bruised him up and hurt him, and then landed all weird on this log, and he was injured for sure. Nothing permanent, no major damage or anything like that, but it scared the hell out of him, and that deer, they never did find him. Another instance where this guy that I used to know him really well, and I know that he's not full of it. You hear some of these stories that are like kind of far-fetched, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know if that's true. You're telling me a whopper or whatever, but this dude didn't do that. He wasn't that kind of guy. He's a trader. I say was just because I'm really not in contact with him anymore. I kind of wish I was, but anyway, he goes out, gets a deer down. Again, it's a mule deer. And due to where it was at, he kind of just figured he was going to load it in the truck and then take it back to camp and gut it. I don't quite understand that thinking. Not something I would do, but and I don't recommend that. But for some reason it made sense to him, and this is a pretty seasoned hunter. So there was a method to his madness, and I just don't know what that was. Anyways, he's able to get his pickup. This is back years ago, and he was able to get his pickup kind of up to the area where he got this deer, loaded it in the back of his truck, and starts going down the dirt road. The damn thing jumps up and hops out of the side of his truck, rolls a little bit, and jumps up and runs off, never to be seen again. So, I tell you these to highlight the especially when we're dealing with like a 700-pound elk. Man, you really have to verify. These things can be super dangerous, and obviously we saw that in Oregon this last weekend. And they're super dangerous animals, especially when they're wounded, especially when they're cornered, they're scared, they're desperate. So they will do whatever. It's their last full measure, right? You're the threat. It's their last full measure. Their last option is to come at you, and they're gonna win. They're 700 pounds. And so it doesn't have to even be a bull. A cow elk can do a lot of damage to you. So can a doe. I've seen doe get up on their hind legs and just start. Have you ever seen them? Like, have you ever sat in a ground blind and watched two does come in and they're not super friendly with each other, and all of a sudden they get up on their hind legs and start just throwing their hooves at each other? It's pretty nasty. They can mess you up. And so the point being is, just be careful, guys. Make sure that animal is dead. I've done the whole, I grab a stick and I'll kind of poke at it and make sure I verify the tongue's out. I make sure like the eyes are open. A lot of times the elk or whatever wild game species it is, if they're still alive, they'll close their eyes. That's just my experience. I'm sure other people have experienced other things where they've come up and the elk was dead and the eyes were closed. So I get that. I'm just telling you from my experience, from what I've seen, if it's laying there with a blank stare in the eyes, it's dead. If the tongue's out, it's usually dead. If the eyes are closed, you need to be advised, because I've walked up on a deer, eyes were closed, and he was still alive. He wasn't able to get up. I had to dispatch him as he laid there. So they could just come at you. They're super fast. They're unpredictable. They could be very aggressive. And I'm hoping and praying that you guys are safe out there this year, and just keeping that in mind as we roll into September, because I don't want to be a downer, man. This is I'm really excited about this episode and the timing we're in. I'm about to leave. I'm starting with a 2-day hunt, and I'll be back for a day or so, and then I'll be leaving for 10 days, and just got a lot going on here, and so I'm really pumped. And I've got a couple of new cameras I'm going to be running this year. Try to get as much film as I can. So, and I wanted to also tell you guys, if you guys do tag out, man, send me pictures of it if you want, and I'll share that stuff on our Facebook page and our Instagram. Just send them to jim@thewesternhuntsman.com. And shoot them over to me, and I'll put them out there. Make sure your name's on there somewhere so I can give you credit and all that kind of stuff. It's fun to share all that stuff. And guys, just again, going back one last time, I can't reiterate this enough. Be safe. Be freaking safe out there. Don't get so excited you just run up on your elk while he's laying there, because that sucker could still be alive. And if you do need to dispatch him again, make sure you're just really keyed in, watching, being overly cautious. Get another arrow in that elk or deer, and make sure that he is dispatched before you get up too close. So that's that. I just kind of want to leave that in where it's at. Again, my heart goes out to the family of this guy that was killed by this elk this last weekend in Oregon, and they're going through a tough time, and I just want them to know that at the Western Huntsman we're thinking of them, we're praying for them, we're here for them, all that kind of stuff, guys. So let's leave that there, guys. For today, as we go into this episode, I have a special guest that we got on the phone and talked for about 9 minutes, and he's given us kind of like a motivational pep talk kind of thing. And he's a former guest on the Western Huntsman, Mike Barnes. He's down in Colorado, and I want to play that right now for you and let you hear from him. So just so you guys know, he used to basically be in charge of like all the fitness stuff. I'm terrible at explaining that kind of stuff. He essentially was part of the San Francisco 49ers and traveled with the team and helped with the fitness aspect of these professional athletes. And so he's got a lot of credibility on this topic. And so he's going to give us a little motivational talk. It's like 9 minutes, and let's let that play right now. Here we go with Michael Barnes. Okay, guys, I got a special treat for you for the grand finale of the whole School of September series that we've been doing since we kicked it off in April. And as we get this one rolling, if you remember back in, gosh, when was that, Mike? Was that April, May?
I think it was February or something. We were talking about, you're obviously talking about the fitness stuff.
Yeah, maybe it was that long ago.
Yeah.
But it was a while ago. We had my friend down in Colorado, Michael Barnes, of MB Fitness, and we talked all sorts of stuff from nutrition to fitness and everything else. And he promised he'd come back on to give us a pumped up motivational speech right before season, because we all know things are going to get tough out there. And Michael, I appreciate you coming on for this, man.
Well, thanks, Jim. Again, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And I know if you're looking forward to elk season like I am, we need some stuff in our mind to keep us trucking along during those hard times. There's going to be a lot of miles this year, a lot of steep country for all us Western hunters. What can you tell us to keep us pumped?
I think it kind of comes down to a couple different things, and to have kind of a clear vision on what you want to get out of the experience is absolutely key. So we were just talking, you and I, Jim, before we got on air here, and we both agreed that it's kind of nice to help out other hunters if you can. And if you have an advantage, or an area, or you want to get someone into hunting, or it's someone with a disability, or a friend or family, it really doesn't matter. You kind of want to show them, how you like to hunt and what they kind of want to get out of it. So some people are like, look, I just want to go hunt for a couple of days. I want to get out. I want to hear some bugles. If I get a chance at one, great. And other guys are like, I'm all in. I've been training a long time. I've been studying. I've been listening to your podcast as well. And in your, your elk series was great. You kind of got to sort that out at first, so, are you level 1, 2, or are you level 9, 10? So It kind of depends how you want to meet that experience, to tell you the truth. To me, we were talking about solo hunting. I love solo hunting. I love the time alone.
Yeah,
I love the challenge. I hunt slow compared to a lot of other guys that, kind of run around and bugle and track stuff down. That's not me. So a lot of times it's like, I'm going to pace myself through the day. And if I got a chance to kind of recover, I know my quads after a day or two are going to be kind of depleted. That's fine. So, so the first thing would be to kind of identify what you want to get out of the experience. So, Jim, and if you want to, we can just kind of go back and forth. Tell me what you want to get out of your experience. Is it always trying to put something down, or I want to have a lot of cool interactions, or
I am I've used the phrase in the past. I'm a holistic hunter, man. I want to enjoy the outdoors. I want to enjoy the scenery. I want to enjoy the animals, the sounds, the smells, the getting up early, the sunrises, the sunsets. And man, I want to tag an elk out when it comes time. I want an elk whether that thing comes in screaming or he comes in silent. My goal is to have a notch tag at the end of the season, but I want to enjoy it along the way.
Well, yeah. So, and if you got a 10-day hunt, and I know you got one coming up, it's okay. So if you see, a 350-inch bull and he's 10 yards away, and you got a perfect shot on, early morning, day one, that might not be what you're really looking for if you got 9 more days to go, right?
Now, wait a minute. If he's 350, that sucker's going down.
Yeah, I put him down too. I'm walking around with no bow in my hand for the next 9.5 days. I do the same thing. So you I like that holistic approach. That's kind of me too. And ultimately I'm out to kind of, I want to put a bull down for sure. So, it's a marathon, right? So if you want to go for 10 days, or else you're going to be a better part of the week, kind of pace yourself. So, you're not going to blast through 3 basins in the first day and, climb 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet vertical. Okay, well, look, I want to hit some areas. I want to be very detailed. I want to kind of pace myself through it, and then, probably get some locations or some herds identified, and then you can kind of, close the distance after a certain amount of time. So just kind of keep that in mind, and I think a lot of times when you get so spun up in the moment, you kind of lose focus of what you're there to do and how to enjoy yourself. And, if you need to take some time out because of rain, or you need to rehydrate, just be able to adjust on the fly. as well.
Yeah.
That's absolutely key. One of the things too, and I'm just going to add to that a little bit more, is just, and if you've been working on it and you have what's called a growth or a open mindset about it, you'll just have so much more fun, as opposed to, well, I'm really not good at calling, so I'm just going to go spot and stalk, or I'm going to, set up a tree stand or something like that, because I'm not good at it. So, hunters get better over the course of time. A lot of guys talk about experience, and, once they kind of get into it, it's like, man, they put something down every year because they put the time and effort, and they've learned from their past experiences. And that just comes with time and learning in the off season and being prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it, man. Do you have any, I know we're getting short on time here, but do you have any like thoughts or words of motivation or wisdom for, let's say somebody's been out, they've been in the field for a week, they've got 3 or 4 more days, they're tired, they're wore out, they've got blisters on their feet, their back hurts, they're tired, they didn't get enough sleep. How does this guy get it done still?
Yep. And it's kind of a matter of focus. So there's a sports scientist that's University of Missouri a number of years ago, real sharp guy. And he is, he's an applied sports scientist type guy. And I like what he uses about focus. And it comes down to 5 things. And those 5 functions of focus are being in the present, just knowing where you are, what you're there to do, have a clear vision. I'm right here, right now. If it's, if you're going to get out early, if you get out in the middle of the day or whatever it is, and you're feeling like you're kind of dragging your rear end, okay, that's where we are. I need to be in the present, and to have those strong, positive thoughts. That's number 2. So, okay, look, I'm going to focus on the good things. How are you feeling? I'm going to tell myself I only got a little bit farther. I'm in great shape. I can get to the top of this, ridge or whatever it is. I'm going to hit the next basin. I'm going to pace myself up. I can do this. Number 3, maintain composure, having the right mental attitude, not being too excited or not being, I'm just going to kind of slowly, lethargically make something happen. So there's an ideal point mentally on this U-shaped curve, not over and not under. So keep that in mind. Concentration is number 4, finding the information that matters. And to me, when it comes down to that, if you really want to execute a good shot, so maybe there's some trees in the way, maybe the animal's starting to move, he's quartering away, he's quartering to, just, finding the information that matters, putting those pins where you want to put them on, waiting till it crosses the right area. And also, obviously, if you're a bow hunter like we are, you just have to use great technique when you shoot these bows, because as you know, if you're out 40, 50 yards, that arrow could be sailing someplace you don't want it to go. Sure. And then lastly, kind of when you're hitting that bottom, it's like running a marathon. At some point during that marathon, you're going to feel like absolute crap. And you're going to say to yourself, why do I do this? This is uncomfortable. We're in for a marathon of a season, and that's what you want to experience. That's what I want to experience, is to have confidence in yourself that the best will come out when it matters. I can execute, I will execute.
Ooh, I like that, man. I can execute, I will execute. All right, guys, as you go into the elk woods this year, guys, keep that in your mind. I can execute and I will execute. I knew I was going to get something like that from you, Mike. That's fantastic stuff, man. And I sure wish we lived closer, man. We'd go share a hunt together, and I'm wishing you the best season this year.
You too, buddy. Put one down for me, would you?
Yeah, you bet. I'll try. Good luck and take care, man. Let's touch base after season.
Right on. I'll be tuning in, buddy. Thanks. Take care.
Awesome. That was cool. I always dig it when I have Mike Barnes on. He's a good dude. Always a great guest. Sorry about that. I hit the mic stand there. Anyway, all right, guys. Let's get into this with Jason Phelps. By the way, I wanted to thank you guys real quick. August was like this crazy huge month for downloads for the Western Huntsman podcast. And I think it's like a combination. We had a bunch of good guests, and we also had, we're coming up to hunting season, so I think a lot of people are starting to tune in more to podcasts and stuff like that. But we just had like an astronomical amount of downloads, which is just, it speaks to the fact that I have the best audience out there in terms of hunting podcasts. You guys are just awesome, man. I don't get a lot of negative feedback. I don't get a lot of people attacking me. I do every once in a while, which is always expected. But most people are just freaking cool. They've been so nice, and their feedback has been so kind and positive, and man, I really appreciate that. And the downloads, it just really surprised me. Yeah, and then what else surprised me is like where the downloads are coming from. And I always thought that I'd get the most downloads out of Idaho because I'm here in Idaho, but actually Washington has the most amount of downloads. In fact, specifically, I get more downloads in Seattle, Tacoma, Washington than anywhere, but just barely. But then coming in right behind that is the Boise area, and then the Spokane area, and some other parts of Idaho and Salt Lake City and Denver, Colorado. Those are kind of like the top areas. So interesting to see how that breaks down. And just again, guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. That it just means a lot to me. I wish I could shake everybody's hand, and you're just along for the ride with me, and I appreciate it. Let's keep this going, and you guys, if you have any suggestions or comments or constructive criticism, anything like that you want me to know about, definitely feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And so with that, guys, I appreciate all the downloads and the support. You guys rock. All right, man. September's here. Jason Phelps of Phelps Game Calls. So Jason started Phelps Game Calls essentially. I don't know if it was technically in the garage, but I always kind of have that in my mind. He started it at home, making his own calls, and with the thought of sharing it, with some friends or whatever, the calls. And next thing you know, it's growing into what it is. And he actually kind of talks about that. We start the episode off kind of the story of Phelps Game Calls. And Jason is one of those guys that he goes all over the place to hunt elk. He's been successful with Roosevelt. He's been successful with Rocky Mountain elk. He's been successful all over the West, different states, and just does a great job at both promoting his company. They make fantastic calls. As you know, they're a sponsor of the show. We have a promo code for Phelps, which you'll hear in the ads that we have, but that's Huntsman10, and that gets you 10% off of Phelps Game Calls. And they're just a great company to support. And Jason is one of those just salt of the earth kind of dudes. You just want to like have a beer with him and hang out with him because he's just a great guy, super down to earth. You never know what you're going to get when you're getting like a founder of a company that's well known and popular kind of thing. You never know what you're going to get with those kind of people. But Jason is one of those dudes. I'd invite him around my campfire any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Just a great guy. I'm super excited to have him on the show, and we break down all sorts of stuff elk-wise, elk hunting, strategies, calling, stories, all sorts of stuff. It's a long episode, guys, and it's the grand finale for 2020 School of September series. If you listen to all episodes, you are going to be a graduate of the School of September at the end of this show. And I'm in the process of having T-shirts made for the School of September and I don't know, what do you guys think? Should I have something that says like School of September alumni or grad or something like that? Let me know if you got any T-shirt ideas on that, and I'll put them up on the website. We're almost ready with that merchandise side of it, so it'll be kind of cool. Anyway, guys, here we go with Jason Phelps of Phelps Game Calls. Here we go. All right, guys, I am on the line with the one, the only, what else should I call you, Jason? I mean, there's all sorts of stuff.
We should probably stop there because I already can't live up to whatever you're going after there. So we'll.
Oh, I highly doubt that. I've got Jason Phelps. I've got Jason Phelps on the line with Phelps Game Calls, as you guys know, for the what I was just telling him before we hit record is kind of like the grand finale of the School of September series. So up until this point, I'll just kind of go through it real quick. We've had the Elk Nut Paul Medell on. We've had Dirk, the Bugler on. We've had Corey Jacobson. We've had Michael Batiste from the Elk Calling Academy, and Chris Rowe from Rowe Hunting Resources. And and then we had Joe Giglia of Elk Bros. And so we're kind of wrapping this up with Jason Phelps. And I think it's kind of a perfect way to wrap this series up, actually, because Jason, when it comes to like calling and all this other stuff that we're going to get into is tactics and strategy, you've got some excellent stats, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to this when I've had a ton of messages about it. So thanks for joining me, and welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I really appreciate it.
So I kind of want to start this off because I've wanted to have you on the show since I started the podcast, and this is the first time we've been able to make it happen. And I know it's a super busy time. Elk season's about to kick off, but I was hoping I can get just kind of a snapshot of like from the the bird's mouth or whatever himself. Like, how did Phelps Game Calls start, and like how did it become what it is now?
So I mean, just like I think most businesses and ideas, it came from, out of necessity. When I started to call elk, and I thought I was good back then, 25 years ago, whenever I started doing this, and I thought I was good, I kind of ran into, some of these calls some of these are good, some of them are bad, some of them aren't usable, some of them are great, some of them last a long time, some of them don't. And I just, kind of out of frustration, like I said, necessity, what if we can build a couple of these right, why can't the rest of them be right? And so I started just kind of exploring, like, how to build game calls. Knew a little bit about them from tinkering them. I was a guy that would take my Primo's hyperlip apart and try to marry it with a fighting cow from Carlton. And
I forgot about that hyperlip, man.
Yeah. So I was the guy that was tinkering, like, I'm going to build my own call out of these guys' calls, and just started to kind of learn, what the calls did, what mattered, what didn't. And then, just started doing my own, kind of coming from a small town background. Wood shop was, taught in high school. I knew how to run a lathe, knew how to, do all of that. And so that was kind of my easiest entry into making calls, was to build a wood bodied call with an insert that I could get readily available, and then, do a little bit of tuning and make them sound good. So that's kind of where I started. And to be honest, and I don't know if people care to believe me or not, I honestly thought when I started this, maybe sell 10, 20, 30, and maybe get my buddies to trust me enough, or the calls be good enough that maybe my buddies will run them during hunting season. And that's where I thought it would probably end.
And so that was like, give us an idea, like how long ago was that when you started tinkering around, started making some of the calls, and then you're like, okay, hopefully my buddies will buy these and use them. What was that, about 10 years ago or so?
Yeah, 2009. So a little over 11 years. I started kind of, and it's a slow process because, to be honest, you don't really know exactly what you're doing and where to source parts, and even the tools that it took to build a call right and consistent. So you kind of go down that path, and I got pretty good at these, and a small town relatively shy guy, not good at talking. I had a fairly good knack for marketing, and hey, if I could just get these people, to let me share my calls or do some giveaways or whatever it was, so I went like to the Monster Muleys forums and talked to the owner, like, hey, I'd love to just provide some free calls to your users, and that picked up some steam, and local forums, and people started to like them, and whether it was marketing or just, I don't think I have a great personality, but everybody, whether it was my personality, whether it was my, ability to give the, people time, things just started to pick up steam, and being a diehard archery elk hunter, like, well, what's next? Well, I need to learn how to make diaphragms. Well, how do you do that? And so you go back to the drawing board. Where do you get diaphragms? Who builds the presses? What design do I want in my presses? And you start to track down all of these items. And then that was like the progression, was to get into, building diaphragms. So that was, I knew I had to get there to kind of get to the next level. It was a struggle though, because when I started, without the, any financial backing and doing it all out of pocket, you were kind of stuck with using what everybody else was using out there, whether it was the same materials, the same frames, the same tape. And it was a little bit of a challenge, but we pushed through. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours behind that press, frustrated as all get out, until we finally started to have some recipes come together, and kind of just learned how to put a diaphragm together that people would, some people could use. Some people couldn't use the flat frames, and I knew it was always going to be a struggle, which ultimately down the road, leads us to the amp frame, rewind. We used to do beagle tubes, but they were made out of fat bats. Your kid's wiffle ball bat. We'd take them, we'd cut off the neck, we'd drill the holes in the end, we'd put some electrician's rubber splicing tape on them to kind of deaden the barrel. We'd sew the covers in house, whether it was my grandma or my aunt, and we were doing all of this stuff, and then everything kind of fell into my lap at the right time. Fat Bat's like, hey, we can no longer sell you guys tubes. Well, guess what? I had a tube design forever. I just couldn't afford to bring it to market. Well, I had finally, hey, I've saved enough money. Let's just go full. Let's double down on our own designs, and that amp and Unleash came out about the same time, and just kind of took off like wild, fire. And that was kind of the big turning point for us, is when we were able to produce and design calls that I had designed. I was excited about. I had tested, vetted, made sure they were good, had hundreds and hundreds of field users use that amp frame before I ever brought it to market the following year.
Oh, really?
I knew a guy with a narrow mouth, what he thought of the call. I knew a guy like myself with a giant mouth could use the call, and everywhere in between, people that hated flats, people that liked the flats, and had enough feedback that I was like, all right, I'm comfortable enough to release this diaphragm. And, I can remember the first time Dirk actually walked by the booth. At that time he wasn't using our calls, but just like always, you want to hand those guys some calls and just say, hey, crank on this and tell me what you think. And I remember him coming back by the booth later, like, don't change anything, just keep doing that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. What year was that?
That would have been the very first year we were in Salt Lake City, and I believe that was 2017, because we tested them in 16, released them in 17, and just kind of went on from there.
See, I love those kind of stories, man. I like hearing that kind of stuff. You're like, you start making these things in your garage, and next thing you know, you're in Salt Lake at the expo, handing these things out to like Dirk and whoever, and starting to get feedback, man.
Yep. And to me, I love to hang my hat on the fact that it was just because I wanted feedback from a guy like Dirk, like, hey, I'm pretty proud of these. What do you think? And there was never an intention like that meeting would turn into what it is now, our relationship with me and Dirk. It was more just a validation, like, all right, we've got a good call. I never intended, at that time, like, Dirk was never going to be, one of my employees, or, the friendship would turn into what it was. It was just more of a validation. And, it's him being a good guy, giving me honest feedback, me being a good guy, just, wanting his feedback, but nothing else. And then, ultimately it's turned into a real good thing for Phelps Game Calls.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting, man, because that's actually, I met Dirk at a trade show too. It was the Bighorn show in Spokane, and he was in the Mountain Ambush booth hanging out there. And I'm like, I know that dude. That's Dirk. That's Dirk Durham. So I go over there, and I talked him into letting me write an article about him. And so little did I know that, he's Jerk Durham. And I said all these good things about him, and now look at it, man. That was I just don't know if that was a good idea. No, he's a great dude. That's a great story, man. I'm a huge fan. It was by default, and it probably was about, I think it was 2017 or 2018. When did the amps come out?
17 was the first year we launched them in February of 17 to everybody.
Okay, so it must have been 2017, because I had a call that or a read that I was pretty happy with, and you know how it goes. You get up on the mountain and you lose one, or you ruin one because you drank a Gatorade and it got messed up in your mouth right after, kind of thing. And so I had to run into town. They were out of that particular call, but they had the black amp. I think it was a black.
Yep.
And I picked up a couple of those, and I went up there, and it was like, and I'm not exaggerating, man. I went from sounding like a whipped coyote in a freaking riverbed to all of a sudden I'm just screaming on my bugle tube with these amp calls, and I've never gone back. I still use the amps, and I use all of them. I know there's like this fun rivalry between like the Pink and the Maverick and whatnot, but man, I've called in bulls with the Pink. I've called in bulls with the Maverick. I've called in bulls with the black. It's just a freaking awesome. It's like it was one of those like industry standard game changer kind of reads that came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was, and that kind of brings us back. You can sit and design, and I've got 3D printers, and I've got the ability to test a lot of these things, but there's still always some anxiety leading up to, all right, we've spent all the money on this tooling now. We've picked out our aluminum thickness and hardness, and you get that first batch of frames in, right? And you've got to build calls on them, and to validate them and make sure that they were good. That was the very first thing that me and Charlie Smith, one of my, I'll call him my master builder, one of my better builders, one of my original builders. We sat down for a day or two and just, we couldn't screw them up. Like, you could, even as a builder, like, that was another thing. Like, all right, if we build these all exactly, that's great. But as a builder, if we go, 10 1,000ths loose or 10 1,000ths tight, or we don't get it in there perfectly square, the call was just working.
Yeah.
The very first ones we cranked on, and I went through the whole entire first show series, the Portland Sportsman Show and the Salt Lake City Show, and used the same 5 calls to demonstrate the entire time. And like, wow, these things look wore out. They're just beat. They're wavy, but they were still working. And so it gave me a ton of confidence that, hey, these calls, there's something special. Like you said, they all work. And there was a reason why it was on my 17th revision, that I thought, like, all right, we've got something now.
Yeah. What I think really stands out with those, and I'm not trying to make this a big, a Phelps commercial or whatever, but what really stands out is I've been calling for long enough to know that I'm a pretty decent caller, right? I'm not a great caller. I'm not like the bugler, kind of level, but I'm a pretty good caller. And the same reed that I use, whether it's the Pink or the Maverick or whatever, I last year, like a month before season, man, I gave one to my 17-year-old daughter. Actually, she turned 18 in September, like a month before, and like, she's out there. She worked her butt off for a month, but she was using the Maverick and the black amp, and I cut the black amp down just a touch to kind of help fit her palate a little bit better. But she's out there screaming, with this thing last year, man. And nice. So it's just an interesting thing. Like, for advanced callers or beginning callers, it's these amp diaphragm reeds are just kind of, it's hard to beat them. And so
I agree. And I'm not that guy that's going to sit and talk about our own stuff. Like, it's there's certain stuff works for certain people, but in my testing and all the feedback we've got, they work for a lot of people. And, it's nice to know that we designed something that seems to work a little better for most people.
How long have you been hunting elk? Does that come out of your childhood or adult onset, or tell us about that?
I wish it came as a child. Deer hunting was okay as a kid. Elk hunting was not. Elk hunting was like, I can remember growing up, like, I was so mad at my dad and uncles because the kids never got to go elk hunting. If they did, it was maybe ride around with grandpa and grandma, while the guys elk hunted. It was beat the brush. You're in the timber all day long. Elk hunting in Southwest Washington is a whole lot different than everywhere I hunt now in the West. So I can remember that being kind of that rite of passage. I think they finally started letting me hunt elk my junior year. No, I take that back. My sophomore year of high school. But they gave themselves some additional hunting season, because they said, here, you take a muzzleloader, we're going to keep rifle hunting. So they were extending their seasons or their time out in the field, or their the potential to put meat in the freezer by getting me a muzzleloader tag. So I was able to go out there and start elk hunting, but it wasn't the way in what we knew that the guys did. And so my dad's uncles, all of a bunch of loggers forever, they hunted elk hard. They would check the clear cuts first thing in the morning. And if the elk aren't there, they were diving in the timber, and you might not see them until dark, where they said they were going to come out. And that was like the way that my family elk hunted. And it's a lot different than 95% of the places, that elk live nowadays. It's not it's not jump in the timber and beat the brush and learn how to track and be able to read the sign and basically, go track a bull down in the timber and kill him before he sees you type of a hunt. I grew up deer hunting, but knew I was always going to be an elk hunter. Absolutely was excited for that day, that rite of passage to be able to elk hunt with the guys. And was very fortunate to learn from some really good elk hunters and maybe even better woodsmen, that they hunt elk differently than I do now with the calls in my mouth, but I was able to pick up and still use a lot of the stuff that they use as far as, being able to track elk, smell elk, figure out where they're at based on, hunting through the timber. And I still, use a lot of that information now to be successful in archery bulls.
So that was kind of one of those things where you kind of, they let you dip your toes with muzzleloader, and you guys are hunting the west side of Washington, right? Where it's like a jungle over there.
Yep. Intense brush. I know you're up in northern Idaho. I can't compare them to each other, but this coastal brush is something else. Devil's clubs, everything pokes you, sticks to you. Whatever it may be, gets you, and it's definitely challenging. And it rains here the whole time.
Yeah.
From about October on, you're always going to be hunting in your rain gear. So it's a little different,
it's so brushy.
I don't want it is, and I don't want the rest of your podcast listeners to tell me that I think we're better, but it's a different game. I've always said that a successful Roosevelt elk hunter can go anywhere and be successful elk hunting. I don't know if that reverses. I don't think you can take potentially a good Rocky Mountain elk hunter and throw them in this coastal jungle and they're going to be able to find their way. And I'm not saying that negative or that we're better, but I've seen it enough times that there's been a lot of, industry guys come to the coast and kind of just, get their, butt whipped and put their tails between their legs as they go home.
Yeah, no, I agree totally with that. So I've hunted all over the West. I've fished all over the West. There's and I've never hunted Western Washington or Oregon, and in fact, I've never hunted Oregon. Hopefully, I'm going to change that soon. But anyway, okay, I've been over there, man. North Idaho is one of the most difficult areas I've ever hunted. And I think that if I came to Western Washington and chased Roosevelt, I'd have my ass handed to me in like a pink wheelbarrow. And I mean, it would just be a disaster because it is seriously brushy and super thick. And like you said, like it's thick and brushy here, but you don't stick to everything. And there is some visibility in North Idaho at least. So, I mean, it's just. And it's like that anywhere, there's challenges wherever you go, right? I mean, Arizona has its challenges, even though it's wide open kind of country, and with the exception of some of that higher elevation stuff and ponderosa forests and stuff. It's just, it doesn't matter where. They've all got their challenges, but there is something super unique about Western Washington and coastal Oregon, that Roosevelt country. I've never done it, and I really, really want to someday. So that's.
I mean, I've got some amazing, used to have some of the best elk hunting in the world, right in my backyard. And, it's definitely nice as you start to cut your teeth on calling bulls in because you had lots of opportunity. Now we have hoof rot and some other issues that are bad. And then the only downside, which is, back when we were just filling freezers, we didn't care. I am almost positive, there's no scientific facts to back this up, just my own observation. We have the world's smallest the smallest antlered elk in the world in my backyard. So
really?
they're Roosevelts. They've got huge bodies, but they're just, I mean, everything's, what I would consider a raghorn now going to other states. There's just, I don't know if it's our age class, if it's our genetics or what, but there's just very rarely, big mature bulls here.
So what's your favorite state to hunt?
Favorite?
Yeah. What would you say is like just the most enjoyable hunt you've been on state-wise?
I think Wyoming. I've only been there once. I've been there, once on an elk hunt, once on a deer hunt. And I like Wyoming. Where I elk hunted, there was a lot of elk. It was just, it was beautiful country. I loved everything about it.
That was that hunt you went on last year when, well, I don't want to say the area. Anyway, but it was Wyoming. Yep. I think I know where you were at, but so that type of country, and that particular area of Wyoming is like, it's grizzly free, right?
Yep. And that was a lot of that went into weighing in on my decision. I will hunt grizzly country. I do it in Montana. I'm going to do it this year in Wyoming, as I have another tag that I was fortunate to draw. I'll do it, but that definitely added into having that many points, 10 years. I wanted to be able to hunt hard until last light and not worry about the next 2 hours, or have that worry potentially, the little gremlins in your head saying, well, you really shouldn't go after them because you're going to be in the heart of grizzly country 2 hours from your
Yeah.
truck or from camp. And so it was kind of added into my decision, along with just the sheer number of elk. Like it was one of those hunts that was so fun because you were always an elk, always calling elk. They were super talkative. And Wyoming right now was up there. New Mexico was a blast because I love being a guy that lives in Western Washington. As we just talked, has a ton of water. Water never means anything here.
Yeah.
Growing up, where you go to New Mexico, and I'm like, this is amazing. All these elk have to be on water every morning and every night. This is like way better than a salt lick that was put in. This is way better than a mineral site. This is way better than a wallow. Like anything you could throw anywhere else in Idaho or anywhere else, like these water tanks, these guzzlers are like, this is cheating. It's like knowing where your opponent's at every time you start the game. And so New Mexico was a lot of fun too, but I think Wyoming, just for the sheer amount of elk and the amount of noise that those elk in Wyoming made, was fun.
Yeah. There is something about Wyoming that I love, and I've never hunted elk there, but I have a feeling that's going to change next year because finally I'm starting to get some decent points over there. So anyway,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Perfect.
That's awesome, man. No, that's great. Yep. And so. Okay, so we got some background on you. We got a cool story about how Phelps Game Calls started, and like the direction. Is there anything direction wise you want the audience to know about Phelps Game Calls before we get into some of these hunting topics for the series? In terms of like, do you guys have anything new coming out? Do you have what is like the 10-year plan of Phelps Game Calls kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to keep innovating and if not innovating, making something that we all use and making it better or more user friendly. Really put our ear to the feedback that we get. I was unaware of how many people needed a smaller call, so we've got something we're trying to address there. Not everybody can run a diaphragm, so we've got something we're working on there that sounds a little better than anything else I've been able to use. Just always trying to double down and think of what users aren't we reaching now, what would they like to have, and always grow that, whether it's through better materials, different materials, kind of that whole gamut. And then really look at, I'm an elk guy by that's my passion, but I also love turkey hunting when I used to get to turkey hunt. Now that this business is so busy, I haven't got to hunt near as much as we used to, but the turkey hunting industry is 4 times bigger than the elk hunting industry. So as a business guy, putting my passion aside a little bit, but I still love calling the turkeys. Like, hey, we need to definitely pick it up on the turkey call side. So we're going to dive deep there. We've got some new predator call stuff coming out. If it wasn't for COVID, we would have been there already. But this year, we've had a great year, but materials, testing, getting samples was a disaster because it seems like every manufacturer in the U.S. shut down to build face masks.
Yeah.
And they were. So we've got some stuff. We're going to now, instead of being able to release it, we're going to get to do a whole nother year of testing. So we're pretty excited about all of that to see if all of our designs are good, and then bring a lot of stuff to market early 2021.
Well, when you're talking predator calls, what are we talking? Like you guys, no, wait a minute. Was that the coyote call or something like that? Anyway, what do you guys have coming out predator call wise?
So we've always had a fawn in distress, and that's a closed reed. So basically anybody that can cup their hand and blow on a call can use a closed reed. We've got 3 open reeded, similar to our easy estrus. You've got a reed on top of a plastic tone board. We've got 3 of those coming out, and then we're also working on a line with some pretty good coyote callers. Coyote howler diaphragms, distressed diaphragms, and some of that. So we're trying to really fill out that whole line on the predator call side.
So like Dirk sold me on this blacktail fawn in distress for bear hunting. Now I failed. It did not call in a black bear for me, but that was my fault, not the calls. Have you used that thing for black bear?
So I've never hunted black bear because in my state, unlike your guys's, it's almost impossible to draw a stinking spring bear tag. And I had enough points that I've never personally used it. And there are a lot of people out there that do use that fawn in distress call for spring bear, at the time that those fawns are dropping. I will tell you what I did with those calls, and I did it a bunch of times, and it's a kick, but I don't like to stress the deer out in my yard. I love to go out in the yard and hide behind my house and start cranking on that thing when I know there's a deer out there or a doe out there. And you will watch her run by you full speed at 6 yards as she turns the corner on the house looking for wherever that fawn is.
Yeah.
And so it's obvious that they work. The meat eater guys have tested that call a lot more than I have. Ryan Callahan, back when he used to guide black bear hunts up in Canada, I believe Ranella used it on a Sitka blacktail hunt, where a lot of times you call the doe in with that fawn in distress, and the buck in the rut is right behind her. We have used it in Montana during the rut, that those does, and you'll watch 10 deer come single file over the coulees or through the rises, and then that buck's just behind him because he's not going to leave that group of does. So there are times where this thing works. I just haven't got to use it yet on bear, but using it as a deer call has worked well. And then I know Callahan and some other people have used that call really, really successfully for spring bear.
Well, I think my problem was I didn't have enough time this last year to get after the bears. I only went out a few times, but come over and see me in Idaho, man. We'll go try it out. We got this area I hunt has 4 black bears per square mile. It's pretty thick. So, I was
give it a try.
Yeah. Come see me. We'll go try it, because what I get nervous about is I'm always solo hunting with that. And I'm worried, okay, I'm facing this way, using this call. I'm worried like I'm going to turn around and there's going to be a black bear, about to lick me right across the face,
Yeah. That's a struggle, because they're so dang quiet too. And so that's how it usually happens, is that they're just right on top of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're super quiet.
But I need to come spring bear hunting more, because my kids have decided that there's no better food on earth than breakfast sausage made out of bear.
Yeah.
So I need to keep that stocked up in the freezer.
Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about that, and maybe we can work something out for next year, because I don't think the non-resident tags are too much. But what do you say to, like, I want to get your reaction. Word got out that I was having Jason Phelps on the show, right? And so I start getting all these messages and voicemails, and I got kind of an interesting voicemail from a guy, and I want to get your reaction to it, and I don't want you to I don't want you to take it personal, but you mind if I play that voicemail?
No, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Sometimes the internet gives out on us, but I just want to get your reaction on this. This guy he's super opinionated, but let's see what he says.
Jim, this is Doug.
Perfect.
Flutie. Doug damn Flutie. Listen, word on the street is you've got some so-called celebrity coming on there onto your show tonight, and I just kind of want to put a bug in your ear about that guy. I know his name is Phelps Game Calls. I like to call him Phleps Game Calls. Phleps Gums Game Calls, that is. Yeah, he likes to run his mouth. He thinks it's pretty big stuff, big old, celebrity and all. But listen, I don't know if I'd listen to everything he had to say, or I don't even know if you should be letting your listeners listen to that nonsense. I know you and I put together a real nice podcast, here a few weeks ago, and I sure enjoyed that, and I appreciate it. Kind of let me set this record straight on a lot of these misconceptions about elk hunting. But anyway, I just want to caution you. A man will lead you astray, and he might even say some unkind things about me. And I'm trying to put the shoe on the other foot, and trying to turn the other cheek, if you will. But anyway, if you can take some of that advice, I'd appreciate it. If you want to talk a little bit more, I'm always open for conversation. You know that. If you want to drink a cold hams and smoke some Marlboro Reds, just give me a holler, old son, and we'll just connect the dots. All right, Jimmy. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
What do you say to these naysayers out there like Doug Flutie?
Oh man, I'm still laughing. I don't know how he does it. But
He can turn
good.
that on like a water faucet, man. It's crazy.
It makes, the thing is, like, some of his ideas and these voices in these skits, like, they makes me so uncomfortable. My skin crawls. But no, that's what's so awesome about him. Yeah, Doug, that damn Doug Flutie.
Damn Doug Flutie. He's my friend now. Doug Flutie's my friend now. He came on the show. He signed the wall in the urinal of the Broken Time studio, and so I got to support the guy. But
I got the odds in Vegas on Doug Flutie killing the bull this year are like 500 to 1 though. So the poor guy's got his the odds stacked against him.
All right, sounds good. So it's an interesting dynamic watching. We'll switch gears. Heck with Doug Flutie for a minute. Well, it's an interesting dynamic watching you and Dirk kind of. What you guys. It seems like a really good partnership, and it's kind of fun watching, man.
Yeah, you don't get you only get a few guys, that are as good of a guy, as personable as him, and just that quality guy. And we work well together. There's, I have some wit and some humor, but just not even close to his level. Like, I'm the dry engineer, the smart guy, nice to everybody. And then you got Dirk on the other side, polar off. Well, he's nice to everybody, but it's like, he doesn't want to dive too deep into, being a nerd. He's just super funny. Can recite any video, movie line, all of that stuff. And so it's just a good dynamic. We work well off each other. When he's thinking about this, I'm thinking about the opposite, and it makes sure that we don't end up, too far deep into a rabbit hole, working through some of our ideas together.
No, that's great. You make some good points there in terms of, because I've known Dirk for a while now, and he's super witty. He's a lot more witty than I am. I can't keep up with him. Yep. No, that's great, you guys. I was super happy when I heard you guys were going to start working together. He was coming on board with Phelps Game Calls, and yep. I think that's a good partnership there for sure. So, all right, so let's get into some elk talk a little bit here. What do you know about elk?
Nothing. No, I know if I couldn't use calls to call elk in, I might be the worst elk hunter there is if you took my calls away. I do know that. No, they're awesome. They're amazing creatures. As we've mentioned maybe multiple times already, like, I'm a nerd at heart. Like, I'm a social engineer, but like, when I first started hunting elk and decided I wanted to kill these things with a bow and be able to control them with calls, and when I mean control them, like, get them to do exactly what I want, I just became a complete student of the game. Like, I watched elk, from 1st of July until November. I just wanted to know what they were doing. Well, hey, that bull just chuckled and he was in the middle of his herd of cows. Why did he do that? And then that bull's chasing another satellite bull off, but he chuckled again. Now, why the heck do those two sounds happen? The same sounds, the same bull, but yet he's doing two different things. And so I just, like, I've for lack of a better word, just became a student of the game. There wasn't a lot of information out there when I started to do this. I didn't really have a good mentor in my area because nobody archery elk hunted back at 20, 25 years ago when we started doing it.
Everybody was rifle hunting back then. Is that you didn't know anybody or what?
Yeah, I just I guess once I decided to pick up a bow and start going to bow shops, you realize that there's a lot bigger group of bow hunters out there that maybe I didn't see. But I can remember the 110,000 acres that's known as the PL South Weyerhaeuser camp. I could drive all day long and never see another bow hunter in the woods ever. It was me. I had all of these elk to myself, and like I said, I learned a lot of hard lessons, but I had a lot of opportunity and learned really, really quick what worked and what didn't for my style, and kind of developed that. So as a fat kid at heart, I loved eating these things. Like, man, these things, not only are they fun to hunt, but these things taste dang good. And a whole bunch of different recipes. So it was like the perfect pastime to go, go call these things in, kind of like the puppet master. Like, man, I wish I could, when I move my hand this way, or when I make that call, this thing does this. And when I do that, it does this. And that was really my goal, was to go out there and be able to kind of trick nature, control nature. And then I came from a big family that was all about stacking meat in the freezer. So that was always important, to go out there and do that as well. So
when we're talking about Well, actually, I want to circle back to the recipe thing and the elk meat and all that kind of stuff in a minute here. So let's
Okay.
dive into a little bit of philosophy in terms of what is Jason Phelps? What are some things that you find important for not necessarily a new hunter, maybe it's an experienced hunter like me who spent a lot of time in the woods but isn't successful every year, right? And somebody that they really want to get after it. Can you walk us through? You get up in the morning. It's September. What does a day elk hunting with Jason Phelps look like?
So very first and most importantly is, and everybody's going to be like, well, we're not learning anything from this guy. He just says the most obvious answers. The very first thing I have to do is find an elk. The very first thing you have to do is find them. Mm-hmm. Whether that involves, this is where Doug Flutie's probably going to call me and leave me some nasty voice messages. If I'm
sorry.
not
I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to say I gave him your number, but I'm not going to not say it either.
Okay. So, if you're not in elk every single day, morning and night, like you need to do something different or be in a different unit. I love more than anything to grind it out, and it only takes one elk, but being in a big group of elk or in an area where you have multiple opportunities every day is always going to be to your benefit trying to kill these things. But with that said, let's say you are in an area like that. My goal is to just find the elk that morning, wherever they're at. And if that means blazing ridges as fast as I can walk and locating bulls, then that's what it's going to be. Or if I was able to not, and I was able to go locate a bull at night the night before, I want to be on that bull first thing in the morning. So I at least have that guaranteed opportunity that morning versus potentially just aimlessly walking through the woods or doing the same thing that I did the last 3 or 4 days leading up to that and getting the same result. My goal is if there's not an elk there, if I can't find one within a decent distance, then I'm gonna do something different. So find elk, really track down the elk, and then play our game after that, and then we can get into kind of like what's that philosophy once we have located elk.
Well, let's stick to locating them for a minute, because I want to dive a little bit deeper into like what are you doing to find elk? What we want to find an elk, right? Or a group of elk or whatever.
Yep.
Like what kinds of things are you looking for in let's say a unit? Let's say you drew a tag in Wyoming and you've done all the e-scouting, you've done all that stuff. Now you're day one on the ground in the field. What kinds of things are you looking for at that point?
So I'm going to go try to truth my high points. Like as much as I love to bugle, as much as I love to get a bull to bugle back, I'd much prefer to be able to look at these elk from a distance prior to my hunt, leading into my hunt, during my hunt, and just really, all right, I'm on a high vantage and I can see, for miles in each direction. Like that's my ultimate spot to be. That way I can look over at this mountain. Are they on the south? Are they on the west? Are they on the north? Are they on the east slopes? Like what are these elk doing? Where are they at? What elevations might they be at? Or, and I can start to answer some of these questions because that information is going to be good for the rest of this hunt, probably in that unit throughout. Are these elk coming out to feed in the high meadows, above the cliffs, below the cliffs? All of that stuff is going to play into what I'm going to do and what I'm going to make my decisions based on for the rest of that hunt. So number one, first and foremost, use my binoculars, use my optics to figure out what's going on in that unit.
Okay. So on that line, let me throw a scenario at you. You're on a ridge, you're overlooking, a drainage or a basin or whatever. You see a bull elk feeding. It's first thing in the morning. He's just kind of moseying his way up, right?
Yep.
Do you throw out a call or do you close the distance? Kind of give the listeners like, what are you going to do at that point? Let's say he's 500 yards away.
500 yards away, I'm not going to do anything. I get nothing in return from getting that bull to talk to me besides let him know that there's potentially another bull over there. So once I locate him, that's the same thing. Even with a location bugle, the only reason I'm doing that is because maybe it's in the timber, or we know that it's at a time where those bulls are back in the, going to bed and they're unvisible. But I'm not going to call at that bull at 500 yards at all. I'm going to let him be. And one of the biggest keys to what I think my success is, if you can let these elk do what they want to do for the most amount of time and only have to kind of change them or change their route or change their temperament for a short amount of time, the better you're going to be at notching those tags. So if that bull's feeding across the meadow at 500 yards and I know about where he's going to be, one thing I do have to kind of figure out is can I make that 500 yards? Is it flat, or is there a big creek between us, or how long is it going to take me to get over there? But I'm going to be quiet, get the wind right, and then just go try to get in front of him if the wind allows that. A lot of times these elk are smart enough to feed into the wind. They're no dummies. They live, they survive for reasons. So a lot of times your ambush spot might not be the best spot to go set up. So you might have to, challenge the wind at a 90-degree angle, to move in, or take a little bit of risk on that, because these elk do. A lot of people don't realize that, the elk feed in and out with the thermals, and they want to live. They don't necessarily want to get killed by a predator or by me. And so a lot of times you can't just get the wind perfect as you're trying to approach these things, because the wind's going to give you away. So that's some of the stuff that goes through my head. But ideally, I'm not going to make a peep until I'm within 100 yards or closer of that bull, if I can, if the vegetation terrain allows it.
So you guys heard it right from the guy that makes elk calls. He's not going to start blowing bugles at this guy.
Nope.
Okay. So here's another scenario. You're on the same ridge, but this time you kind of look down and below you, which could be problematic because we're still talking first thing in the morning, right? Those thermals might be going down.
Yep.
But this time, this bull elk is within 200 yards. What's your move at that point?
If I can see him, if he can see me, first thing I'm going to think, once again, the wind, and we can always come back to that. It plays an important part in archery elk hunting, especially where you've got to get close and almost no, unless you can shoot an elk at 300 yards, which I don't recommend to anybody with archery equipment. Every time a bull or any elk's going to get killed with archery equipment, they're going to be close enough that they can smell if you don't have that right. So it's always got to be first. If that bull is in a location where I can move, ideally, I'm not going to make a peep again, and I'm once again going to back up, back out, evaluate the wind, what it's doing, and then figure out where I have to be in order to call that bull in. Because you can fool their eyes, you can fool their ears, but you can't fool their nose. And if I give up my location or based on wind or smell, that whole entire chance of killing that bull is over. So I'd rather risk being seen or heard, back out, get the wind right, and then make my approach on that bull. And then it'll be really similar to that first snare. I'm going to try to get as close as I can to that bull before I make a peep. Any information you can pick up when you see that bull. Did he have cows? Was he alone? Was he traveling fast? Was he feeding? All of that stuff's going to add into my, how quick I need to move, what my next decision is going to be.
So, like, on that note, like when you, and this is kind of off topic a little bit, but when you get into an area and you've got, let's say, 5, maybe 6, 7 days to get a bull in front of you, do you have like target goals? Are you looking for I'm not going to take a bull until it's a 300 or better kind of situation, or are you more, if it's a bull, branch antlered or better, like, what are you looking for?
I'll give you the cool guy, I'm a real good hunter and a trophy hunter answer. I'll say that before I hunt. I'm not killing anything less than, and I'll throw some crazy number out there. And the reality is a bull that's 35 or 40 inches smaller comes walking in. And I remember it's almost like, grandpa or my uncles are sitting on my shoulder and my dad, like, hey, that thing eats just as good as a giant does. And I fall into this trap. I'd love to be a trophy hunter, but I'm not a good one.
I know, I'm not either, man.
I absolutely love chasing that biggest bull on the mountain or the biggest bulls we can find. But man, I'm a trophy hunter's mentality with like a meat eater's trigger finger. Like I just
that's probably the best explanation I've ever heard on that topic. It really is.
I love eating elk meat, as we mentioned earlier. Like the freezer's been full since I can remember, and my kids love it. We all kind of love that part of it, and so it's one of those things. Now, special hunts, of course, the longer it takes you to draw a tag, if it's a special tag, some of those things, if the area is just absolutely loaded with big bulls, and it makes it easier. But I bet you I can count how many bulls I've passed on one hand still. In my career, I have passed some good ones on film. Last year I got to hunt Mount Emily in Oregon, which was one of those hunts where you don't just, kill the first bull. And I passed on some good 6 points, and I passed on a 7x8 that was a little bit younger. There were some bulls I passed on that hunt that I'm like, man, have you lost, completely lost your mind? And then in the end, when you kill the bull like I did, I'm like, well, that was all worth it, and it added to that experience and those memories. So, yeah, I love chasing the biggest bull on the mountain, but especially on an over-the-counter tag, the first bull that gets in the bow range has the likelihood that it's going to come home in my backpack.
Yeah, that's I love the statement. I am a trophy hunter with a meat eater trigger finger, and because that's so true. And I think that is the case for most hunters, man. I mean, we all watch these YouTube shows and whatever where these guys are getting these huge bulls and these big bucks and I'm so guilty. And in fact, last year I just got into whitetail. I've always been a mule deer hunter, and I'm a big time mule deer hunter. And it's one of those things. That's what I grew up doing. It's my passion. Love it. Elk hunting is kind of taken that place, but there's still that longevity factor of my history with mule deer. You know what I mean? And so love mule deer. But anyway, I just got into whitetail hunting, and last year I'm like, okay, I've got 2 whitetails down in my life, and this year I'm gonna get the biggest whitetail ever. I'm gonna go after him, and I'm not kidding you, man. The first the smallest 4x5 you will ever see in your life, literally smallest 4x4 or 4x5 you'll ever see in your life. I don't even know if you can call it a 4x5 because the one you could barely even put your ring on, and man, I smoked him. Right. It was like not even any question because. I'm like you. I think about the freezer. I want that meat, and so like on and when we're talking along those lines, do you have an opinion as to when you're talking about hunting a 300 plus herd bull kind of class bull versus hunting, a raghorn? How does your and I don't know if that's even a fair question because maybe your strategy doesn't change. You just kind of hunt for whatever comes in front of you. Can you talk about that? I don't know if you guys know this yet, but hunting season is knocking on our door. In fact, some states it's already even open. I'm seeing pictures on social media. It's coming, guys. Have you gotten your Scree gear? Scree is extreme mountain gear that is designed for rugged western hunting like we talk about on this show all the time. Complete layering system for all terrain and all conditions. Gear designed to adapt to the weather, rugged gear backed by a lifetime warranty. The VIP sizing and exchange program is amazing. If you get the wrong size in the mail or something's not right, you send it back for free. They send you the mailing slip for it and take care of everything. Guys, this is great gear. I've been running Scree for a long time now, and I really, really like it. It's a great company story. The owner is real big on having high-performance technical hunting apparel at a responsible price, and that's what you're going to get with Scree. You know how it goes. You can go drop a small fortune on some of this gear out there, right? And we all love to have it. I love having this gear. But with Scree, you're going to get the high-performance gear. You're going to get everything that you would expect on a high-performance kind of company like this with the gear you're going to get, but you're not going to break the bank. You don't need to sell your kids. You don't need to take out a second mortgage. Just get you some Scree gear. And at checkout, go ahead and use the promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. That's a smoking deal. And Huntsman is spelled Huntsman. A is in Apple. The Western Huntsman at checkout with Scree gear. You should check out the elk bundle they have. It's pretty spectacular. Hope you guys check it out. I appreciate you supporting our sponsors. And our other sponsor is Phelps Game Calls. Guys, the premier call company. Everybody knows Phelps. We all love Phelps. If you're not using Phelps Game Calls, you're not doing it right. Okay. No, I'm serious, guys. Phelps is a company that was born out of this great American success story that started something small and it turned into this big company that everybody knows now. I use Phelps for my elk calls. I use Phelps for predator calls. They've got some new deer calls coming out. It's going to be great. So I use the AMP series for the elk. You guys know September's on its way. Or it could possibly be here by the time you're listening to this. Who knows? But September's September's on its way. My favorite time of year, better than Christmas, better than anything. September, man. Get your amp calls. I really like the Maverick and the Black Amp. Those two are screaming reeds. And there's a bunch of other reeds for different types of palettes, if you will, or the way that you use a call. It might change, so you got to try a little bit of everything. And the pink call is fantastic. But personally, I like that Black Amp, that Maverick reed. Those two are kind of my go-tos when it comes to calling in elk, and boy, do they work. Again, check out, guys. Phelps has given us a promo code to use. It is Huntsman10, HUNTSMAN 10, number 10. So you'll get 10% off at checkout. Go to Phelps.com and check it out. It's going to be in the show notes. And lastly, just as a bonus promo code for you guys that are in the market for a new set of boots, I love the Explorers from Hoffman Boots. They are badass boots. They will get you up the mountain. They will get you down the mountain for several seasons. Check them out. The promo code for Hoffman Boots is Huntsman15. Huntsman is all caps lock. HUNTSMAN 15. Go ahead and check that out. It'll be in the show notes, and get you some new boots, and let me know what you think. Thanks, guys. Here we go. Let's get back into it.
Yeah, so a lot of that, more so my experience on hunting a lot of Roosevelt herd bulls, it was always my goal in all of my seminars and a lot of my, educational stuff that I put out. It sounds like we're always hunting herd bulls. And it is, and I'm going to tell you why my strategy doesn't change whether it is a herd bull or a satellite, or if I'm trying to kill any legal bull, why I'm still going to go after that herd bull. With the exception is if I've glassed a satellite bull, or I can see that it's a group of satellite bulls all by themselves, no cows anywhere, the herd bulls kicked, I'll use a different strategy. But satellite bulls are extremely curious, and the reason they're called satellite bulls, it's in the definition, is that those bulls are going to be a satellite bull to that herd. That herd bull, the cows, they're always going to be within 300 or 400 yards typically. They tend to bed next to the herd. And I would say, as I mentioned earlier, we've killed a lot of very small raghorns that we have here in the Willapa Hills behind my house. I've killed almost all of those bulls targeting the herd bull. Those bulls are extremely curious. They come in sometimes silent. Maybe they'll let a little half-hearted beagle out at you, trying to figure out what you are. Who's this new bull that's showing up to our satellite bull party? Because, Fred, the herd bull over there, has got his herd, and he doesn't bugle like that. And so they'll come in just to investigate, to get themselves killed ultimately. And so we found out hunting Idaho, hunting Wyoming, hunting a lot of these other places, we can use those same exact tactics. Let's target the herd bull. Let's not make a peep until we get close. We either see him or his cows. We know we're on him, and we're going to challenge that bull. A lot of times that bull will come in, or he'll be interested, and we'll have to play that game. But a lot of times, if the satellite bulls haven't picked you off on your approach, because as I said, a lot of times these satellite bulls will bed 200 or 300 yards away from the herd, and a lot of times they are downwind. So it's almost like these things talk. They've got some sort of knowledge of the situation, and they send these lookouts. Basically you're going to walk right into all these satellite bulls on your approach to the herd bull. But let's say you get to where you need to, you call. A lot of times these satellite bulls are still going to come in and give you an opportunity to get a shot if that's what you're after. So my strategy, aside from knowing it's a satellite bull, on a lone hill or something, is always the same. If I am targeting that satellite bull, and that's all I want to kill, I'll just go get close to him and use a whole bunch of sexy cow talk. We've been fortunate enough to call a lot of these satellite bulls or satellite bull groups in, and it seems like, and burns, and so you can really get a good idea of how they're reacting to the call, real-time response. And these bulls will actually start to move faster the more you call. So in those satellite-only situations, we tend to cow call heavily and kind of just keep pouring it on.
That's a good topic in itself, man. Like, would you say you rely more on cow calls than you do on being super aggressive with a bugle?
No, I'm 95% bugles, 5% cow calls throughout an elk season. If I had to throw a number out, I would just say in that one situation where it's a satellite bull or a group, then I'll be heavy cow calls. I'll put my bugle tube away in that instance only. I don't need to hear this thing bugle. I know he's most likely going to come in to just those cow calls. Now, on that situation where I'm trying to call a herd bull in or potentially one of his satellites, I'm going to basically kind of evaluate the situation. How talkative are they? Can I see the elk? Can I see the response? But I'm going to paint the picture that I have a cow or one of his cows coming into Estrus, and this herd bull is, he's paying attention to his cows, but then I'm going to simulate a bull that's there to take care of her. So I'm going to Estrus whine, a pretty good whiny cow call, and then I'm going to challenge bugle right on top of that. Basically what I'm telling that bull is you have no more time. You can't round up your cows and leave. You basically, the whole fight or flight response that some bulls will take if you give them the time. He's lost the ability to fly with his cows. He's got to come basically fight and defend that cow at that point. And that's really as simple as it seems, kind of the strategy I use over and over and over throughout an elk season.
So, okay. You just threw a lot at me there, man. I want to talk about that Estrus call because it's like a controversial thing, right? Among the elk, within the elk hunting community.
Okay. Can I interrupt you there, Jim, just for a second? So this is what I hate about, and I get along with a lot of. I mean, I work with Chris Rowe, I work with Paul. When you say controversy, the one thing that frustrates me is there should be no controversy. We can argue all day long over what that sound means and why they do it. And I've heard it before. So, I mean, I've got video of cows in Wyoming doing it, 600 of them doing it, buzzing, estrus whining. They can say whatever it means. All I know is when it comes to killing that bull, it worked. And so the controversy is kind of over. And so I don't necessarily need to debate what that sound means or why they did it. If I do that and follow it by a challenge bugle, I usually get that bull to come into archery range. And so that's where I've really struggled. And me and Dirk have like, man, we want to learn, if I get along great with Paul, he uses our calls, Chris Rowe uses our calls, but they have different teachings and, different strategies. But I would say, hey man, I would never tell somebody not to do what you do because you guys are killing bulls, but maybe don't say that what we're doing, maybe it's wrong in your guys' interpretation, but dang, I just had that bull walk within 5 yards.
Yeah, and I would say that the word controversy may have been misplaced in terms of like your Chris Rowe, who I'm a big fan of Chris Rowe, right? When it comes to like elk biology and behavioral stuff, I could talk to that dude for hours, and same with the elk nut. And it's so controversial. It's not like they were making that controversial. It's no. It's other people sometimes. It's like this a social media debate, right? You get these people going back and forth on Facebook, and it's the same old story. It gets super old. I hate that kind of stuff. But I want to kind of investigate that for a minute because I'm super interested because I've never really tried that. I have two strategies, man, and I am not on the level that you and Chris Rowe and Michael Batiste and all these guys are on. But I have two strategies. I'm either a cow calling a bull in, and I'll cow call a bull right to me. And I did. I cow called I was using your pink call last year. I cow called a bull right to me. Nice. Couldn't get a shot off. He's kind of behind some brush or whatever. And the wind shifted right there, and he boogied out. Or I want to piss the bull off. Those are my only two go-to things, and I feel like I need more tools in my toolbox. And this is me kind of talking selfishly as with my podcast. Maybe I'm going to get something out of this. And so when you're talking about making kind of like this estrus type noise, and then you follow it with a bugle, can you walk me through that?
So I wish I had a call here close by because it's really wavy. It goes high low. So
I have a call. I have a call. So let me throw one out there and see if we're on the same page with that. Is it okay if I use a Maverick?
Yeah, I'll assume that it was trying to sound like a real elk. So yeah, we're good there.
I love it. All right. I'll try it on a Maverick. So I don't know. We'll try it. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Just a whining?
Yeah. I'm going to actually get up. I'm sitting here in the shop. I should be able to find a cow call somewhere here in the shop.
Yeah, you'd be a lot better at it than me. Let me ask you this: Are you doing that on an external or a read?
You can do it on both. I'm actually going to use an external here because I seen one, my personal one sitting here on the table next to me. So I'm going to grab it, and you're going to hear this is just on an external. You can do it on a diaphragm. It's going to be really wavy, and hopefully I don't blow out these speakers here. But so it's just a whiny.
Gotcha.
It's not a perfect cow call. I mean, I can sit here and make perfect mews all day long. Like, wow, that sounds perfect. But there's no intention on an estrus whine, in my opinion, to be perfect. Really, what you're trying to emulate just a cow that's definitely ready to be bred or needs some attention. And so they make those really whiny, drawn out, long cow calls. In Wyoming last year, I did a lot of those through my tube with the diaphragm because those cows were super needy and super, it had that resonance to it that I couldn't even match with just my diaphragm alone. So I was actually doing a lot of those cow whines through my bugle tube to add that depth and resonance and kind of that additional echo to it.
Okay. So when and maybe you said this and I missed it there, but are you doing this as like a kind of a cold calling sequence? You don't know, you're suspicious there's elk in the area, or is this something you've already determined? There's a bull in this area, and you're going to throw that call out.
Yeah. So all of those situations we talked about earlier, where we've located a bull somehow or some way, I'm going to get the wind right and if I can see the cows, the better. Like the closer I can get, the better. And out of the blue, like completely cold, if I did my job right and haven't bugled my way in or had to relocate this bull or try to figure out where he's at, I want to do that estrus whine very first without that bull ever knowing I'm anywhere in the world until that cow, I make that easy estrus sound or that estrus whine sound.
Gotcha.
And then instantly, and the reason I do this with a diaphragm, because I don't have to drop my external, I'll do that whine with a diaphragm and I'll instantly pick my tube up and give the biggest, nastiest, throw the entire kitchen sink at him challenge bugle.
Oh, okay. So you'll throw a few of those out, and then you're just ripping off a huge bugle after that.
Yep, back to back. No, I don't care what he does. If he bugles the cow call, I'm still going to challenge bugle and walk on top of him. If he doesn't bugle, I'm still going to do it. And then I'm going to kind of pay attention to the situation. Like, am I close enough? Did he respond? Can I hear sticks cracking? Whatever it may be, I'm going to be a student for a little bit and pay attention. And then the other thing is, I would always, now nobody can call you or me and say, hey, Phelps, you screwed up a lot of my hunts this year because I listened to you and it all backfired. I have a very aggressive style where I did this enough that I know if I don't get close enough to these elk, it's not going to work. So we used to always kind of joke, from if you're not bumping, you're not racing. If you're not bumping elk, you're not hunting elk was kind of one of our original, kind of our mottos as we went and tried to call elk. And like some people even got frustrated, like my buddies, like, Phelps, all we're doing is scaring elk all over the mountain. When are we ever going to try to call one in? And it was just a way that I learned we were getting very, very close before we ever started, which tends to turn better results, but you may screw some up in the process.
When you say very close, how close are you talking?
I mean, I've started calling setups within 70 or 80 yards of elk. I can see them. I can see them moving. I've been able to sneak in and get close. And one thing people need to remember, if you did your job and got the wind halfway right, you're going to start to smell these elk as you get close, right? So that's one indicator you're going to be able to use, you have on your side. If the elk have, fed into the wind like they should be, and you're coming up, from behind them, you should start to also see tracks and pick up scent where they've been. So there's going to be some indicators that you're going to be able to pick up as you approach these elk.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So I just want to recap that. You're going to locate a bull. You're going to locate some elk. You are going to close the distance to get, 70, 80, maybe 100 yards away. Sometimes you can even see them. You're going to start hitting that call, making that kind of estrusy sound that what we've all kind of come to know as the Estrus Call. And then you're going to follow it up with just a gnarly old bugle.
Yep.
And at that point, you're going to kind of wait to see what the bull does in terms of response.
Yep. And back in the day, there were a lot of, and it seemed to even work better on Roosevelts. And I don't know if that's due to the tight, brushy terrain we talked about earlier, and they can't get good sight lines on stuff, and they can't see where that bull and cow may be. But a lot of times, and this is no joke, it's happened. Like we've got video of it. I can literally put that bugle tube between my legs and knock up, because that bull's going to be 10 or 15 yards in no time if I've got close. And so that it sounds like a completely boring way to hunt elk, but those 2 calls were the only calls I got to make, besides maybe locating the bull for that whole entire, in order to kill that bull.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, like boredom for me is irrelevant as long as I get a bull coming in. I don't care how boring. For me, I've heard people say, they're looking for that certain bull that they want to have a screaming match with kind of thing, kind of scenario, and that's always fun. I love that. But for me, my goal is to get elk in front of me that I can actually put a tag on and install an arrow in. And so that's a great point, man. Okay. All right. Let's shift gears here for just a sec. We've got that. That's a great, I actually got a lot out of that, so I appreciate that. But let's talk about a hunter that's in some dark timber, and it's thick. Maybe it's brushy. It's steep country. There's tons of sign. You're not hearing anything. There's no bugles. There's no, cow calls going on. You're not totally sure where elk are at. All you know is that every once in a while you catch a whiff of them. There's fresh sign. There's rubs. There's droppings on the ground. Do you have like a advice as to what to do at that point? Because we've blown a couple of locator bugles and haven't gotten any responses. Taking into account that you maybe didn't get blown out from the wind or bump them unknowingly, which happens quite a bit. What do you do at that point?
If it's somewhere I've e-scouted, I try to think back to where are all these little pockets. I like to think of where these elk bedding, if they were pressured, where are they going, and I'll go check that out. The other thing I do a lot of times, which is more maybe earlier before I find a spot like this, is just run the fringes, whether it's running the ridge line and evaluating all the sign you see. Is there a predominant way all these tracks are going? And if so, can I get on that trail? Are they blazing the big enough trail I can stay with this main group of elk? And basically, there wasn't elk there at one time that made those tracks. And can I walk out at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 miles, and I'm eventually going to catch up to an elk? In some of the more mountainous regions, those elk aren't going to go that far, but you might have to go straight up to a hanging basin, or you might have to go down into a hole. Where their water and food's at. So, being educated, be a smart elk hunter, use some of that some of that sign, to kind of deploy your strategy and figure out what you're going to do, whether it's track them down. The other thing is run the fringes. So I'm going to run, if that's say on a big hillside, whether it's, dark timber, like you said, hey, if I drop down to the creek, is there more sign? If I go up to the ridge through maybe a couple passes on the ridge, are the elk crossing through here? The last way that I would kind of proof that area is the night bugle. If I'm sure, I'm smelling stinky elk, I'm seeing tracks, I'm seeing rubs, is to maybe just go night bugle and say well, was that, because elk, if it doesn't rain, that elk stench, there's elk living there stench, and then there's live elk smell. And you need to be, whether you can differentiate that or not, but don't be confused that those elk spent, the last week there and now they're completely gone, because you might get hung up on the sign, the tracks, the scat. Make sure that that's fresh, and that's where night bugling could potentially help you figure out if that was, if they're still there or not.
Gotcha.
Especially in wolf country, we hunt a spot in Idaho. We hunted there for quite a few years. If you're in a spot like that during, the rut, and those elk are there for a week or two, that's where they wanted to be, but a pack of wolves runs through, it can completely change that. And if you're not, willing or able to adapt and figure out where the heck they went, you might waste your entire season hunting, some sign that was, it was fresh 2 days ago, but they're no longer here.
Wolves, man. When is Phelps gonna come up with the signature Western Huntsman wolf howler call that is 90% guaranteed to call in a wolf, so I can get them and not have to run a trap line.
Yeah, we're working on them. We've got some diaphragms that definitely work, but trying to modify our beagle tube or come out with a new tube. We've got some. We have some guys out there testing them, but just not something we've fully went after. But we do have the ability.
It's so
to
hard.
Do that.
Like nobody's really done that consistently before. You know what I mean? And so I have quite the wolf season planned out for this year. And I really do, because I have a thing for calling in animals. I love calling in coyotes. I love calling an elk. I love using deer calls and seeing what works with deer and things like that. And so my goal this year is I want to call in at least one wolf and kill it. I have 6 wolf tags, and so it's going to be a big. Anyway, I'm getting off topic.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, okay. Again, kind of, we're going into like this lightning round of questioning I like to do for the School of September. Can you talk about moon phases and how that affects, in your mind, how does that affect elk hunting?
So I'm going to say how I've seen it affect. I'm going to do, like I said, multiple times. I'm a nerd, and so I've always went back and looked at the numbers and dates that I've killed on and figured out where the moon phase was. We've made it to a point. My buddy actually did this for me. I had a trail camera set up from August 1st to September 15th, and he took every single elk picture on there on a spreadsheet and timed it to the moon phase. So I've got a lot of my own little, reasons why.
Man, that is super nerdy. That's super nerdy.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a spreadsheet for that?
Yeah, we took the moon phase for that 45 days and matched it to the date of every single picture and put it in a spreadsheet and figured out if there was any rhyme or reason that the moon phase, those elk were coming up in that wide open in the wallow versus not.
My wife totally just brought me a drink. She's a sweetheart.
Nice,
Thanks, babe.
Nice. That's awesome. So moon phase, I think the elk are still going to rut at the times that they're going to rut, regardless of moon phase. The one thing how it does affect hunters is they tend to do more of their rutting in the middle of the night due to heat and kind of cooling down and having the ability to see a little bit more. So during a full moon, or when the moon, leading into a full moon or coming off of a full moon, I think you get less action during the day, which some hunters equate to the rut's not happening, the rut's late, the rut isn't here, when really it's just happening at a different time in the same exact place it always has. So that's as far as I'm going to take the elk rut affecting my hunt. I've only got so many days in September, and I want to be out there on all of them. So I'm just going to take what I can get. There's only so many Septembers. I don't ever let that affect my hunt. I'm maybe up an hour earlier during a full moon because I'm out there listening, just not making a peep, just sitting there because, a lot of times I'm up on a ridge. I don't want to, I can't call a bull in, and I don't want my wind. I'm just listening for an hour before daylight. Like, where are the bulls at? Are they doing their rutting? The same thing, like, I might walk back to camp. I may eat my mountain house up on the mountain before I hike back to camp, just so I can listen on my way out, and do some of that stuff. So that's really where the moon phase, in my opinion, comes into play. And then I've actually tracked all of my bigger bulls and all of my bull kills, and it was surprisingly, I've killed more of my bulls with more than a half of moon than I have without. It hasn't affected like my kill ratio or my kill times. And then back to my buddy, I think we had 670 pictures of just bulls on that camera. Probably, I can't even remember. This was way back in 2009 that we did this. Probably 15 different bulls, and there was absolutely zero correlation to the amount of moon and the amount of pictures we got at that wallow, daylight or nighttime. So it really had no effect.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm glad I didn't know you geeked out like that, man, because I kind of have that. I did that with fly fishing. I could not, for the life of me, this was years ago, could not catch a freaking fish on my fly rod. And I got obsessed and started making spreadsheets and charts, and I was dealing with moon phases and barometric pressures and all this stuff. And I finally nailed it down. I got it to a science. Like, I get sick of catching fish now. I can only, you know what I mean? And it's just one of those things. So it's kind of cool to hear. I'm not the only one that's ever geeked out on stuff like that. And it's I think it makes a big difference in. Yeah. To your point, The bull I killed last year, he came screaming midday around 11 o'clock after a full moon, and I whacked him. And so yeah.
I'm almost positive the guys that write the "Don't Hunt on a Full Moon" articles are trying to get everybody out of the woods that week so that they can go hunt.
It's not a bad strategy. Maybe we should adjust our thinking, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you can rewind this podcast about 5 minutes until I want to restate that you should not waste any of your vacation time anywhere leading into or coming off of a full moon.
I like it. I like it. It's going to be the Phelps huntsman hunting strategy. We don't hunt on a full moon, guys. It's not worth it. Stay home.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Waste of time.
I love it, man. Well, do you mind if we switch to some Facebook questions?
No, that works.
Now, some of these are going to be a total surprise to me because I haven't checked it in a minute here. So let's. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. So, okay, we have got. I'm just going to read these. I have no idea what they say. My buddy John Thomas, he asks, "What is the best weather trend? What is the best weather trend to have the most activity? I already have a solid answer on this from a friend in Montana that kills big bulls year after year, but I would like to hear what another successful hunter has to say as well. Weather trend."
So I like clear, I like cold, and those are my two favorite. And as I mentioned earlier, I got to hunt around my family, and they were convinced that the rain washes out cow scent. So if those cows are out there doing their thing and putting scent down that basically kicks the rut up, the rain would kill it. So I've always preferred, and I've always had great success. And maybe it's because I'm from Western Washington. I absolutely hate the rain. But my favorite trend is clear and cool. I almost like those days where there's some condensation on the ground, but we know it's going to be a good day. So we've got some moisture recovery that night, a little bit of dew on the ground that morning, but it's going to be a nice day. But I don't like those scorching temperatures. We have had success hunting bedding areas and stuff, or early morning hunts where it's just scorching. But I would rather have it, in that 60 or 70 and clear up in the mountains over any other weather.
Okay. No, that's a great answer. I totally agree with that.
No wind. As an elk caller, I want zero wind.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew Tucker. He's always good for a question on when I post these. It's my cousin, so I can give him a hard time. Okay. Obviously, a huge key is to play the wind, but how much does sweat amplify our smells? Example being, is it better to get to a spot earlier and take your time hiking back to limit sweating, or is it really inconsequential?
I don't want to ignore his question, but I don't pay any attention. Especially when we go to Spike In, some spots we hunt, we're not even hunting for 8 miles in. I just get disgusting nasty, and I've always, and this is just me, and Chris Rowe might have the exact measurement down to an inch or two, but I've always kind of figured elk can't smell, much more over 300 or 400 yards. I kind of assume 300 is getting pretty risky, but I've did it before when I'm trying to circle an elk or get the wind right. Depending on how flat it is, how steep it is, how fast the wind's blowing. But that's kind of my rule of thumb. But I don't pay any attention to that, because once I'm trying to kill that bull and I've got the wind right, it's not going to matter, because you can't control things like your breath. You can't control things like, your underarm, all of that stuff is uncontrollable. Even, probably some of the scent that comes out of your boot and your socks, you can never control that. So changing your shirt or your pants, or, controlling your sweat's really not going to have any effect, because you have to breathe, sooner or later.
Yeah. I would throw in that if it's any consolation to anybody, I flat out wear my regular Old Spice deodorant, and as long as you're playing the wind, it's irrelevant. It's just an irrelevant point.
Yep.
Okay, there's a kind of a theme going here with some of these questions. What would be Jason Phelps' kind of overall advice for the first week of season? We're pretty much there now as we're recording this, right? There's a lot of seasons in Idaho today. And whatnot, but aggressive, slow play, cow calls, the first week of season, early season. What's your advice?
So I'm going to go out there. I mean, we start in Colorado on September 2nd this year. I'm just going to match the intensity. So first, I'm going to go out there and probably listen September 1st. a couple hours into the night, like how active are these things now yet? Is it going? If you can go out there and scout a day or two early, like are the herd bulls pushing yet, or are some of the submature bulls, running the herds? Like what state are they in? How much is it cranking? And then really just match their intensity at least to start. In order to use some of my tactics and strategies, you're eventually going to have to get in and try to turn that temperature up if he's not quite ready. But you're, really match their intensity. I don't really change anything. I don't try to sound like an older cow, a calf, do any of that. It's kind of the same prescriptive, but I won't maybe call as much, or he's not answering, like, well, maybe I'll try a different cow call, or I'll try, and then just try to, it's almost like bass fishing. Let's just throw every lure we've got in our tackle box at them. And let's see
that's a great
working.
way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great analogy, actually. Yeah. Cool. Dude, you're popular, man. I post these questions sometimes on the Facebook feed, and I'll get like 4 or 5. You got a bunch of questions. I posted, I'm talking to Jason Phelps. What questions do you have? Okay.
Oh boy.
Adam Anderson. What was the hardest bull to call in, and what made it so difficult? So this is going to be specific to one of your experiences.
Yep. I know exactly what bull frustrated me and I about gave up 10 times, and I about set up 15 times. And there were multiple times I wanted to go back to the truck because it was getting late and I was 2,000 feet down below the road. So this all goes back to 2014 Idaho bull. Never ever hunted out of state. We were able to locate one off of a high mountain road, basically a goat trail, and the bull was down below us. He answered, and my buddy didn't believe me, and he wouldn't stop chewing on his purple bag of Skittles. So finally I got him, stop eating your food and touching your Skittles bag. There's a bull down there. He just answered, and finally I got him to answer again. So we had to get the truck parked out of the way because nobody could pass, and we went back down there. And he answered me one more time from the road, but we dive in there pretty deep, and we like, let's stop and just listen. Like, we don't know exactly where he's at, and we thought he was going up the creek, and it's steep. And I'm like, man, look at my watch. We've got an hour and a half left, and we're at the point where we can either dive off the other 1,200 feet, or we can climb back up to 800 feet and cut our losses. Very first day in Idaho, hunting out of state ever. So we're there, and he won't answer. And I'm, all right, we got to keep locating. And we look at each other, and we're kind of stuck in a jungle a little bit. And finally I go to one of my open reed cow calls, and he answers. So we know he's still there, but he is working up the creek. So now we're not only having to dive 1,200 feet, but we're going to have to play catch up as this bull's running up the creek away from us. So we bomb. It's one of those things where I'm sure we've all been in that situation, or if you're an aggressive enough elk hunter, it's basically we look at each other and we know exactly what the mode is. Like, we're picking every elk trail, we're running, down the hill, we're running down the chutes, we're picking any little spot we can, and, covering that distance as fast as we can to get close. When we get to where we thought he would be, listen, let another cow call out, and he's up ahead of us. So now we're playing cat and mouse. I can remember, so I'm getting anxious because we've got time working against us, and this bull's not really wanting to turn around, and I know I don't have enough left in the gas tank after dropping and doing all this catch up that I'm not going to be able to run up the creek and get ahead of him at the pace he was moving. So we move a couple times, and we finally, maybe on the 7th or 8th setup, we feel like we got his interest. Like, he at least bugled. He was responding quick enough that he's at least responding to us. It's no longer just like, hey, I'm over here, come get me if you want to come see me. He was answering us directly. About 4 more setups, though, we had to keep closing the distance over and over in the extremely brushy Idaho Creek bottom, where it's got that, I don't even know what it is, the big broadleaf brush that's over my head. And the other hard part is just trying to find a spot to set up where I'm actually going to be able to see before he's like running into the tip of my arrow. So a long story short, first of all, I doubted that we'd be able to catch up to him. Second of all, I doubted that, as I mentioned earlier, it's easier to kill a bull that you don't have to change what he wants to do. So we're having to turn this bull around because we can't catch up to him. And then third of all, dealing with the brush and the setup location so I can actually get a shot. And so, no exaggeration, I probably set up at least 10 times on this bull before we finally ended up shooting him at 5 yards. That bull had no idea we were there. I was at full draws. I kind of seen his horns come through the brush, over top of the brush. He picked the perfect lane, and I had I'm not going to get into frontals or not, but it was kind of a side frontal. The bull died within like 5 seconds, and we spent the rest of the night packing out 2,000 feet. But that bull, in particular, like tested. He kind of checked me mentally. First of all, he checked me mentally, like, are you willing to drop 2,000 feet for, what I thought at that time was pretty low odds? Second of all, can you physically keep up with me as I walk up and then third, I'm huge on setups and making sure that my setup's going to work and I've got the most likelihood to get a shot off. And he tested everything I could there, because I remember getting frustrated. Like, I can't set up here, or I would call and then I would move 5 more feet. And I'm like, well, I can't shoot here and move 10 more feet. He kind of pushed my mental, physical, and then, ultimately me being comfortable on trying to kill a bull from that location.
Yeah.
All in one, call in.
Dude, did you get that hunt on film by chance?
I did. So
You
Charlie,
did?
my camera guy, he's like an inch or two over 5 foot. He actually took the camera up on the tripod and then just held it up over my shoulders because he was in a depression. And so, yeah, we were, I think on YouTube, it's like 2014 Phelps Idaho hunt. And I'm able to shoot that bull at about 5 steps, maybe.
Okay, so I'm just writing this down. Phelps Idaho hunt. I wanna see that. That's a cool story, man. I dig that one.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep. If you can hear me, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Next question, man. I know we're running a little long here. Are you good on time?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Okay. My buddy Zach LaPierre, dude. I'm sorry if I slaughter your name there. Zach LaPierre, hunting elk in the pouring rain or windy days and its effect on elk behavior.
It's frustrating. I don't like it one bit, but as I mentioned earlier, there's only so many days in September, and I'm not willing to sit and camp and miss one of those days. So, trust your rain gear. You're going to end up being closer to these bulls. You're not going to be able to hear them as well. The nice thing about rain, the one thing that does help out is I can quickly see what tracks are really fresh, right? Because they're either going to be picking up dry dirt below it, or they're going to be stomping into the mud that we know they weren't making, hopefully the couple days before.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a long stretch of rain, you're going to have to look at more, beat down trails and stuff. But, if it's new recent rain, there is some good that can come from that. Hunting in the rain just sucks. It typically fogs in the mountains. Its visibility is low. They're less talkative. But one thing you can do is still hunt a little bit more, especially if you're in an area where those elk like to be. There's still a lot of options out there. It's not near as fun, and I don't have like the holy grail answer on what you should do when it rains. It's just a whole lot harder.
Yeah. I would agree. I don't. I actually when I had Dirk on, he had said that foul weather shuffles the deck. Like if the elk were quiet before the storm, they're going to be bugling after, or it could be vice versa, and I think that's pretty consistent as to what I've seen in the past too. So now I think that's really the only way to answer it is it does suck, but B, there's only so many days in September,
Yep. And then coming off of a rain, I love to hunt, especially if you maybe have some sprinkles or maybe a day or two of heavy rain, and I know it's going to clear up. Like I want to be out in the woods for sure those 3 or 4 days, because it could be magic there.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Cool. Okay. Taylor Steelman. Does Phelps Game Calls have a video on tips or techniques on the easy Estrus Call?
That's a great question. I know we did like way back, like 2007 or 8, but I think I was more so just showing what it sounded like and what we can do with it. I don't think they might just give me a good idea for Dirk's next project video is how to run the easy Estrus and place your lips. I don't think we have a how-to. I think Black Ovis maybe had filmed something on how to run it, but internally, me or Dirk, I don't believe have put together a video yet.
Okay, well, the one thing I would say to that is obviously if you back the show up about 45 minutes or so, you were kind of doing that Estrus Call, but yeah, that'd be a good video to throw out there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan Johnson, my pal, are you the Undertaker or Rey Mysterio this year?
I made 0 bets this year, so I did not have to dress up in September.
So you're not. Hey, you know what? I wanna talk about that for a minute, Jason. Now because I was talking. Well, it was to Dirk. I was saying something along the lines like what would somebody's reaction be if, let's say, they're standing on a ridge and they see somebody across on the other side dressed as like Hulk Hogan.
Oh, I know exactly what they would say, because I didn't realize somebody had watched the whole night I killed that bull. I had people watching me through a spotting scope.
And you were dressed as Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Was it Hulk Hogan?
Yeah. The tightest red and yellow tie-dyed pants that I would ever be able to fit in, and it was a disaster. It was a train wreck of an image. But anyways, I killed that bull, and we ended up breaking it down and hanging it in the tree. And there were some hunters from Wisconsin that were camped relatively close to where we needed to park to have the shortest pack out.
Mm-hmm.
And we, just like all hunters, you kind of shoot the crap with them a little bit before you go and start doing work. And they're like, hey, by the way, we told them what we killed over there. Like, hey, by the way, did you guys see these idiots up on the mountain yesterday while you guys killed that bull? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they started showing me, they took a bunch of phone scope pictures of me. It was like, there's this idiot up there dressed in this tie-dyed pants, red shirt, and a yellow bandana. And I'm like, yeah, you kind of tuck your head and raise your hand like that was me.
I'm dying, man.
That was my whole goal. My goal going into that day was to climb up on a mountain that nobody else was stupid enough to climb, hang out there until dark, and then leave. Well, we ended up calling that, and so I had pictures of me up on the mountain dressed as Hulk Hogan.
Did you get that? Did you get that guy to send you some of those pictures?
So he actually teased it a little bit on Instagram before we ever released a video, and now I can't remember his dang handle. So if you listen to the Western Huntsman podcast, let me know your handle so I can go track down some of those pictures.
Yeah, I love it, man. That is, and just speaking from a guy that watches this stuff, I'm such a nerd, man. I love watching elk hunting content. I watch all of it, and it's just one of those. It's just it's who I am. I get super involved in it, but one of the things about the whole team of the whole brand of Phelps Game Calls, right, is you guys just have a good time. You're fun to watch. You're entertaining. You don't take this shit too serious. You just enjoy the hell out of yourselves while you're out there. You kill bulls dressed as Hulk Hogan. It's just a fun thing to watch. It's a great platform, and it's a great brand.
Thanks. We appreciate.
It's just awesome, dude.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's one of the nice things about, still being, a lot of these companies are owned by bigger companies, and image is important. And the one nice thing is that we've been able to maintain, hey, this thing is working. We have a lot of fun. We don't necessarily have to be censored by somebody telling us what we can and can't say. And it's been awesome because we have that freedom. Like, hey, we think this is what the people want. Well, let's do it. I think a lot of people, when Dirk came to me and said, we're going to pin the pink against the Maverick, I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Let's make, but then, like, heck with it. Nobody else gets to make the decision besides me and you. Let's roll with it. And, it worked. So
it was great, man. I was all into that. I was all into it. I'm like, okay. I got to try both of them, and which is funny because, and you could see it in the questions when I posted this tonight, that, I had Jason Phelps coming on. The questions, my buddy Dave West here, how long would you give the Maverick before switching over to the pink, asking for a friend? You know what I mean? And so you guys. I mean,
if something doesn't answer that very first Maverick vehicle, you should probably throw it down at that point and switch to the pink for the rest of the season.
I love it. Okay, last Facebook question. This is from Mike Hers. And Mike is a guy I actually know Mike pretty, fairly decently. We've never met in person, but we talk all the time on social media here. And he is he's an elk slayer, man. And so here's his question. He says, here's one that Jason explained to me, but will help many guys. Have him go over how to set up with respect to how the wind hits your face and setting up so that you are in the position to swing on the bull as he comes into a calling setup. has been a game changer for me and my brothers. Can you talk about that?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we always talk about get the wind right, which basically means get it perfect on your nose, which is it is a great, I mean, it's better than not. But what happens, and I hinted on it just for a second earlier on the frontal shots. I've still yet to have somebody call me in a bull, whether it's like a backed up call or not. I've called in every single elk I've killed myself, which I'm not going to get into the numbers, but a lot of these bulls end up presenting frontal shots, which I'm comfortable with, especially when they're at close range. I'm not going to, but now what happens is when you go to set up as a right-handed shooter, I can swing way to my left. I can swing a lot counterclockwise. I can swing very, very little clockwise and still shoot my bow in a comfortable position. Mm-hmm. So when I set up, I'm always trying to aim my left shoulder at where I think that bull's going to approach. And that gives me the ability to shoot there about 20 degrees to my right and all the way to the left. But what we're really going to do with the wind is we want to use that thing as a steering wheel. So let's say instead of the wind hitting us directly on the nose, it hits our right cheek at, say, a 30 or 45 degree angle. That's still plenty of confidence in the wind that as long as it doesn't switch, you're going to be fine. But what that does is that bull that you're going to try to call into very, very close range, almost every bull you try to call in tries to swing on the elk that he can't see. He's either expecting a cow or a bull to be there because you're trying to call them in. So they if you're doing your job right, they think that there's an elk somewhere hidden in the brush as they approach. Well, they also want to smell that elk versus just see and hear it. So whether it's 100 yards out or 70 yards out or 50 yards out, that bull is going to start to circle the location of where he thinks the caller is at. And we can talk about two caller setups as well. Maybe having the caller back to the right of the shooter if the wind's hitting your right cheek. That way, if he is the elk that elk's coming to see, he's going to circle and half moon that elk right into the caller setup. The same thing with single caller setups. I can expect that bull to at least circle my location to my left. If the wind's hitting my right cheek, if the wind's hitting my left cheek, I would expect that bull to circle and head to the right to try to get the wind. So you're always thinking, if I can set the wind up, if the terrain allows it, the terrain is very, very important in your setup. I like to call a bull to a grade break so that bull can't see, or when he thinks he should be able to see that cow or bull, I'm within range to shoot him. Or on a vegetation break, if that bull comes out of a big brush patch to maybe an open timber patch, that bull's most likely going to hang up at that spot where he should be able to see that cow or bull calling to him. So by using your terrain, your vegetation, and then thinking about using the wind more as a steering wheel than just getting it perfect, all of those things kind of add up to, in my opinion, that perfect setup. Because I'm convinced I get to hear enough elk hunting stories every year that 95% of the guys, even if you're not killing elk or have never killed an elk, they have the tools that it takes to call in elk, but they typically call them into hang-up zones, or they call them into big brush piles, or they call them into spots where you couldn't move and all of a sudden you scared the elk away. So I think by putting a little bit more thought into these setups and some of this stuff, like using the wind as a steering wheel, using the terrain, grade breaks and vegetation breaks to your advantage, you're really just upping your chance of killing that bull.
Man, I've never heard that kind of explanation as to where your wind is hitting your face, kind of thing. That's really cool, man. I think Mike's right. That's like a game changer kind of piece of advice, because I think that a lot of people are like me, where sometimes we get a bull fired up and he's coming in and you're paying attention to the wind, and all of a sudden he's 60 yards and then he's 50 yards and he's coming in closer, and you start losing your focus in terms of where the wind is, and that's where it really messes a lot of guys up, including me, where he turned a little bit and I didn't pay attention to it, and so now he's winded me at 30 yards, but he's behind some brush, so I can't get a shot off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a great point. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, if you can get that elk to arch into the shooter, whether it's a 2-man setup or a single man, like a lot of times, if I make my very first cow call and bugle and I can get away with moving, like I'll make it and then move 20 yards, at a 45 degree angle up into my left, because that thing may think I was just there and I may get him to circle into my new location. But some setups, I don't have the freedom to move like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Sometimes. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, man. We're just kind of winding this down. I have the one question I've kind of been asking everybody, I'm calling everybody that comes on the School of September, the professors, right? You guys are
Okay.
At some point, my t-shirt company is dragging ass, but I'm going to have like t-shirts made that I'm going to send you guys that say Professor of the School of September or something like that. You know what I mean? Something real cheesy, but I'll get them made. I promise. I'm waiting for my t-shirt company there. I think COVID has got them way behind. So anyway.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I've been asking is, what in your mind, you've got all this experience, you've got some fantastic hunting stats. Obviously, you own an elk calling, a call company, if you will, I guess, or so to speak. But you've got a lot of credibility on this. What comes to your mind when I say something along the lines of like, what's the one thing that a lot of elk hunters screw up that costs them a notch tag?
Calling their way in to that elk's location. I've wrote a few articles on this, not so much what you do right, because as I just said, I think a lot of elk hunters have the tools to accomplish it. But I would say more so of what people do wrong. And the number one thing, aside from not giving it enough time, because I do want to say that even as, you mentioned stats or my success or, what I expect out of myself on a lot of these hunts, I'm out there a lot, and it might be day 9 or 10 on a hunt before I've got my first opportunity to shoot it. So time is always number one. But, aside from that, I can't, dictate anybody's schedules. As far as like technique out there, a lot of people will locate a bull and then they're unsure of that bull's location, and they'll call it at 400 yards or they'll call it 300 yards. And all they're really doing is giving that bull a chance to round up his cows and leave and avoid any confrontation. And so I think more than anything, people need to just kind of, locate a bull with some confidence, figure out where they're at, and then be quiet until you're right on top of them.
On that note, like to your point, let's say you throw out a locator bugle, you get a response. Are you saying at that point just shut up and close the distance kind of thing, or is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, ideally that bull will keep bugling because he thinks you're in the area. He wants to get you to respond again so he can be confident that you're not coming down on him or that you left or whatever. But sometimes that curiosity of, hey, where the heck did that thing go? It can kind of add to turning up the temperature. I think elk want, they're social animals. They travel in herds. They want to know what all the other elk are doing. And if you bugle once and then be quiet, he's now a little bit nervous. He's not necessarily going to take his cows and run, but it kind of helps just make them a little uneasy, which may help call them in. So yeah, at that point, once you locate them and have a location, hopefully they continue to bugle, but don't make another peep until you feel you're in that position. You're set up and ready to kill that bull.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that, man. I think you nailed it right on the nub there, because I've thrown out a locator, I'll get a response, and I will turn around and I will crack off the most aggressive bugle. You'd think it was the beach landing of Normandy coming out of that bugle tube, right? And all of a sudden that bull's gone. He's just gone. And so that's a great point. That's just super good information. So, as we kind of wrap this up, man, tell us a little bit, like your take on the Elk Collective and how that helps hunters. I don't know if you know this. I've got a youth contest going on right now where youth hunters are able to submit. In fact, the day that I release this episode is the due date. It might get extended if I don't get enough entries, but we're already starting to pile them up. So
good.
Yeah. And so this contest is like where youth hunters write into me and tell me what kind of hunter they want to be and what kind of example they want to set for youth hunters that are coming up behind them. So the minimum age is 10. And so I'm talking like, what about the hunter that is not even a hunter yet, that's 2? What kind of example do you want to set for that guy or that gal? And so the contest is, one of the winners is going to receive a scholarship to the Elk Collective. And I also have some Phelps stuff sitting around here in the Broken Time studio that I'm going to give away too.
Nice.
And so, which, by the way, I need you to make sure you're on top of your inventory, man, because I need to order another tube for this. But
Perfect. We've got them. We've got them.
Okay, cool. The benefits to somebody that maybe they live on the East Coast or something, and they're coming out west to hunt elk for the first time, or they're a youth hunter and they don't know much about elk, or they're like me who was raised mule deer hunting. And when we went elk hunting when I was a kid, we acted like we were mule deer hunting, and it never hardly ever worked. And so nowadays we have these platforms and these resources like the Elk Collective and these other ones that are out there that I'm a huge fan of. Can you kind of give us what is Jason Phelps' interpretation as to what the Elk Collective is for hunters out there?
Yeah. So I mean, this was all kind of spearheaded by the group of us, myself, Dirk, Dan, and John, and really. As we get to travel around, the need for seminars and just being able to be out there and talking to hunters that aren't successful and the thirst that there's out there for all of this knowledge, and I don't have all the answers. My way, as we already mentioned earlier, is different from Paul Medell's, is different from Chris Rose, is even maybe a little bit different from Dirk, even though we hunt very, very similar. But we're like, hey, let's knock down all of these walls that basically say my way is not your way. And, Ryan Lampers is over here raking in giant bulls, and me and Dirk are over here calling in bulls with fairly good success. And Paul's over here killing bulls by, interpreting their language. And Chris Rowe is following their biology and only calling based on biology reasons.
Yeah.
Hey, but we're all killing elk. So let's give the listener a chance. Let's give them all of this information. Let them pick, choose, combine, morph all of this information from all of these industry. I don't even want to say industry, just people that we know, experts that are successful every single year in and year out. Like if you were betting on them in Vegas, you'd always bet for them to kill an elk.
Yeah. I call it the community versus industry.
Yeah.
It's like the elk, the experts in the community kind of thing.
And just dang good guys that are willing to share some of their, knowledge and experience that they could keep up, locked up tight. So all of these people obviously want to help people be successful. So it was kind of cool for us to go out and reach out to some of these people. The four of us do have some content on there. It is valuable, but really, let's not make this about ourselves. Let's be a spot and facilitate, information from all of these guys, whether it's Joel Turner, whether it's, all of these different guys that we've went and grabbed, and Ben Gorman out of Wyoming, he runs Shednecks. Ryan Lampers up there in Three Forks, Montana, that kills giants every year. Like, what are these guys doing? Let's dive deep into their bag of tricks. Aaron Snyder at Cafaro, like, what's in his pack? Like, there's nobody that probably tests more gear than him. Let's bring all of these guys to one location, and then just provide a resource. And then let's remember that it's 2020. Let's make everything in a video platform or an audio platform, because time is so valuable to these people. Let's not make them have to sit down and read an article or read for hours. Like, they can put their their earbuds in and hit the play button and absorb some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great explanation of it. And what it is everybody, each one of you guys, we all know you're an elk slayer, right? And we know Dirk's an elk slayer. We know John Gabriel. I had him on the show. He's like one of those guys that is like behind or like not behind the scenes, but more undercover. Like, you don't know, but this dude, he gets it done all the time. And Ryan Lampers and Chris Rowe. And I love going through this content. And what makes it super cool for me is I drive a lot for work. In fact, I'm in your neck of the woods quite a bit over there in Pellel. And so I'm all over the place. And I spend, sometimes I get up in the morning, I leave at 5:00 in the morning, and I drive 4 hours for a 15-minute meeting. And then I drive 4 hours back. What do you think I'm doing?
Jeez.
I'm listening to things like the Elk Collective. I could open that up. And I can even if I'm not watching the video because I'm driving, right? And so, but it's on my dashboard and it's perfect because it just Bluetooths to my truck. I could get all this elk knowledge right there. And I learned so much. And I consider myself a very experienced hunter. I've been hunting for over 30, man, I hate to age myself. Over 30 years. Dude, I'm turning 40 this year, so it's kind of like I'm in this midlife crisis or something. But anyways, I could turn this stuff on, and I can soak up so much information that, especially for you younger guys, I don't care if you're in your teens or gals. you turn this stuff on. It's like, it's more, I've learned more out of all this stuff and self-educating than I ever did in college. And it's just, it's a great platform, man.
Thanks.
You guys just know what you're doing with it.
Yeah. And I've been so dang busy with, I'm helping with ideas and brainstorming, but those guys get all the credit up until now because they've been carrying the heavy lifting. I've helped direct it and make some good decisions, but I hope, this year, this fall, September, I'm able to film a bunch of content and get some added up there. And like I say, just never ending, learning opportunities. Let's keep adding on to this big collection and vault of information so that, people can learn from our successes and our failures.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a world we live in, man. You can get all these experts together on one platform. Yeah. And it's all right there. And so it's like, what is it? $119 or something like that to join the Elk Collective. And we're probably talking over 100 years worth of elk hunting experience all wrapped into this one platform. Guys, if you're listening to this and you're not part of the Elk Collective, you need to be for sure. So,
no, I was going to say it's just a little bit more than a tank of gas that you're putting in your truck on one small little portion of your elk hunt to hopefully turn the odds in your favor.
And I've always said too, anybody that's listened to my show, they know that I am far from what they call a gear junkie, right? I don't go spend thousands of dollars on a bow every year. I don't go spend a lot of money, but what I don't mind spending money on is stuff like the Elk Collective and row hunting resources and Elk Calling Academy and Elk Bros and all these platforms that are out there, because it really, everybody talks about, and this is getting a little off topic, but people talk about this a lot where, oh, well, there's a new podcast coming out, Jim, what do you think? And like, I'm supposed to be as if I'm like going to be upset that there's some, as if it's competition. It's not competition.
Yep.
It's not.
Yeah.
Guys, there's plenty of room for everybody, and this Elk Collective is like a perfect representation of that and everybody's perspectives. And so anyway, getting on a soapbox there, but
no,
this is a great opportunity for folks. So I appreciate you guys doing that.
Thank you.
Well, Jason, this has been one of my favorite conversations, man.
Perfect. Yeah, it's been a good one.
Yeah, I think this is going to go a long way. People are going to get a lot out of it, and I appreciate you joining me for the School of September on the podcast, man. And you guys have a heck of a season lined up, so I'm excited to watch how that unfolds.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to see how you do, and it should be a good one. I'm ready after this year. All that 2020 has offered us in all of its glory. I'm just ready for September.
Right. So. I think we're all chomping at the bit, so to speak, to get this season kicked off. So thanks a bunch for joining me, Jason. I really appreciate it. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim.
And we'll, like I said, I'll be watching to see how things unfold, and let's keep in touch, and I'll talk to you soon, man. I appreciate it.
For sure. Take care. Good luck to everybody out there this fall. And
yeah, for sure. Well, thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, talk to you later, Jim.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.